Okay. I think we're live now. I think people can see me and hear me. I'm never entirely sure, right? I'm really bad at the tech stuff. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. Zephyr Hash says, "Woohoo, Collins! What do we get to discuss today?" Well, it is a Collins show, so we are going to talk about whatever we like. Azron, hello, No Cal Mike, who's my co-host, no co-host today, but at 7 o'clock, where Staxiums is going to come in and he's going to debate me on something. He's going to debate me on perfidy. What that is, basically, is it's disguising yourself as a non-combatant in order to carry out a mission of some sort. There's a specific definition. I don't have it up quite yet. I will, obviously, before the debate. But the accusation at hand is that the IDF, or Israel, used perfidy in order to rescue the hostages. So Saturday, maybe Friday, late night Friday, I'm not sure what the time zone difference is, right? The IDF conducted an operation to save 4 hostages who were being held captive by Hamas in a market. This rescue mission ended up with the 4 hostages saved. There was a casualty on the IDF side, and 200 Palestinians were killed. Now, whether those were combatants, civilians, we don't know. There's no distinction made. There was a firefight, though, that happened, so obviously some of them were combatants. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been getting shot at. But this is a question. The accusation is that they disguised themselves as aid workers in order to carry out this mission. That they disguised themselves as they came in using civilian aid trucks to sneak in, and then they went and they rescued and presented themselves as a non-combatant in order to get where they needed to go. The evidence for that is almost non-existent. There's a few testimonies from Palestinians who happen to be on the scene. I haven't seen any video evidence of this. The video evidence I have seen from the IDF side was them in full kit, right? Full combat gear. The IDF in full combat gear conducting and staging the rescue operation. If there is more evidence out there, I would love to see it, but I just haven't. But I think it does ask an interesting moral question, however, which I think is fair to discuss. Is it okay to break international law in order to save the lives of others? So I think we could look at this from a few angles. So obviously, and I think most people would also do this, if I had a child dying in the back of my car, okay, and I had to get to a hospital, I would break the law, meaning I would speed, I would break the speed limit, I would probably run some red lights, maybe, right? I'd honk like hell to let everyone know I'm coming through. But I would break some traffic laws in order to get them to the hospital to save their life. I think most people would agree that that's a moral thing to do. That breaking a traffic law in order to save a life is a moral act. And I would also posit that refusing to break the traffic law because you put and value the law over the life of the child would, I don't know if it's an immoral act, but it gets close to me, right? It's putting your love of the law over love of life in a very direct way that I think is, it just feels wrong to me, right? I'm not sure if I'd go so far to say it's immoral. But it's definitely, I don't know about this one, kings and queens. But that's the debate for 7 o'clock. We are going to talk about it more, I'm sure, throughout the call-in show section. But this is a call-in show section. So that means, dear viewer, dear audience member, that you, yes, you, can call in and talk to me about, well, whatever you like. So I'm going to provide the links for you real quick, both in the YouTube chat and the Twitch chat. You're going to click on that link. You're going to accept the rules. And once you've accepted the rules, you can see all the channels and stuff. at the top of the Discord, there's a channel called Backstage. You jump backstage, and when we're ready, we'll pull you in, and we'll talk to you. Let's see. Chiba Hawk says Hunter Biden is guilty, so expect all those snowflakes that think convicted felon Trump's trial is rigged to suck it up, admit they're retarded. Well, we're going to talk about that as well. Pondy says, I shit myself out of excitement. I don't know. Please use the restroom in the appropriate manner. Do not shit your pants. That is my advice. Okay. So here's the links. I put it in the YouTube and the Twitch chat. Click those links, accept the rules, and call on in. We got a caller already. Let's bring him on. Hey, you're live.
Hey, what's up? How's my volume?
I can hear you fine. I hope the stream can too. Seems fine to me.
I'll project a little bit. I'm not used to it. Hey, it's been a while.
Yeah, a couple weeks at least. What's up, man?
Yeah, just same old. I figure we might loop on this. I know it's a call-in, but like you just kind of kicked it off on this, like
Yeah, I did.
Hypotheticals. So my 2 cents would be like, let's take your example of speeding, because I know that you have very. This isn't an insult. You have very like strong moral like lines, which I appreciate in that.
Yeah.
What I would say is that I think you're correct. It's more like the exception to the rule. So the reason why it wouldn't be a good thing to do is because, yes, you're trying to save someone's life, but the reason that speeding laws exist is to protect others as well.
So yeah, just I understand. And $2 from Zephyr.
Yeah, you get where I'm going.
To say Testy Mega L even before Yaguru's. So,
God damn it! I barely got on the call. I'm already getting roasted.
Look,
hey,
I'm with you. Like, if you think I'm arguing that this should be removed as a law or it shouldn't be on the books, no, you're wrong. I'm also not against traffic laws. I think traffic laws in general are a very good thing. They keep us safe. There's a lot of good reasons to have these laws. There's a lot of good reasons to enforce these laws, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's true. But I'm saying that there are times, right? There are incidences that are context dependent where a higher law comes into place.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I was going to say I absolutely agree, and this is why I say it should be the exception to the rule, right? So,
yeah.
You know,
but I guess would you prosecute that person, right? Would you write them a ticket?
I guess if I was the person that pulled them over.
Yeah, you well, they get to the hospital. They obviously ignore you. They rush into the hospital. You know why they did it. You see what they did. Right.
This might sound like a cop-out answer. I wouldn't blame a cop for giving them a ticket. However, once that's presented in court, I would expect there to be some level of leniency. But I wouldn't necessarily put it on the cop in the moment, because I understand where the position that they're in.
That's a fair thing. But let's translate this out to the incident that happened over Saturday, because people are asking, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So
and for sure, I was gonna kind of roll into that. So
please.
Yeah, so same kind of idea, and the reason that these laws exist is because there's a couple things that this can fall under, but let's just say I'm going to get this out of the way. From what's been presented so far, it does look like the operation was above board. So I know headlines fly and people make crazy shit.
Yeah, but I just want to say, no, I agree with you, and I haven't seen evidence, but if it was, and I think it's an interesting question, right? Like,
even in the hypothetical,
if it was, right?
So I think in a war zone, like it's not a 1-for-1, because I feel like the circumstances are a bit more extreme. But the reason why it's dangerous, which maybe goes without saying, is because if you have people either false surrendering or impersonating aid workers who have special protections under international law for a reason, then they all of a sudden will lose those protections if the enemy is now expecting those types of tactics, which is why I think that it's important that those things are upheld. In the very specific example, this is tough, because I was talking about the exception to the rule. I don't know if I would be okay with it on like a more, because there is a sense of immediacy, right? Like maybe the hostages will be moved, maybe there's other intelligence we're not aware of, so maybe it is time dependent.
And at any time they could decide that the hostages aren't worth it anymore, right? And end them too. So these things are time sensitive. So
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of moving parts that go into this, right? But yeah, I feel like I guess this might seem like a cop out. It sounds like it comes off a little bit as a slippery slope, as in if this tactic is used once, then will it work again? Like, and so, yeah, you're setting a dangerous precedent. And again, this is why those types of rules exist. So, yeah, I am very conflicted. I don't think I can make a hard determination because I
It's
know
a
that
hard
you
question.
can much more easily bite that bullet, but I think
Mm.
that, yeah, the context I provided, the reason why these things are in place is because you're putting down the road, you're putting more people in danger.
No, and
So
I recognize that risk, right? Like, so nothing you said right now is wrong. I think that these are very good reasons to have this law. I think that there's very good reasons to kind of enforce it as well. Um, However, and if you think this is like an easy question, or I would judge you too harshly if you disagree with me, that's just wrong, because it's not. It's not an easy question, because there are real risks when you do these types of things. So again, this is only a hypothetical because the evidence doesn't seem to bear out that this is what actually happened. But in the hypothetical that they did disguise themselves as civilians in order to infiltrate the area and rescue the hostages, my priority morally is rescuing those hostages. There was an incident earlier where the IDF was accused, and I didn't look into it, so I'm not sure if this one they actually did it or not, but they hid themselves as patients in a hospital in
yeah,
order
that's correct.
to
Yeah.
take out a Hamas leader, right?
Right.
I condemned that action because I think that, morally speaking, the the risks they were entailing by endangering civilians, in that case in the future, was not worth taking out an enemy target. I think
So
any benefit, if I may finish my
yeah, of
bit
course.
here,
Yeah, you're
like,
good.
right, any
Yeah, keep going.
benefit that could be secondarily gained, like, you could argue, well, killing that Hamas operative saved the life, might have saved like 10 lives in the future, right? You don't know, like, maybe. But in this incident, the operation objective was to save lives, to save hostages' lives, right? And I think that makes a huge difference. And I think that if the objective was to kill the enemy, then it's not morally justifiable in any situation. But if the objective is to save and preserve lives directly, not incidentally, not down the road, not as a secondary or a tertiary effect, but directly save lives, then I think prioritizing the, like, if I was in the Knesset and I was authorizing these operations, I'd press that button in a heartbeat. Like, I'd
You
be
know
like,
what?
I'm authorizing this action.
I'm only gonna say this once, but I think that you've convinced me because I think that is a very salient distinction to draw. Whereas it's operations to kill somebody or find an enemy versus directly saving someone's life. And so we are placing the value of, and this is one of my big things with all sorts of war and conflict in general, right? It always comes down to the people who are non-combatants and who
Yeah.
are innocents, right? Who always suffer the most. So yeah, when you put it like that, like, yeah, as you said, it's not a black and white type of thing. It's still very morally gray, but I think I would have an easier time accepting it with that framing, because yes, you are rescuing or attempting to rescue someone's life as opposed to taking it. So yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, that's all I
Yeah.
really had.
Um, and I'm seeing in Roland Stott in the thing is saying they killed more people than they saved. Yes, and that's terrible and horrific, but Hamas is entirely and totally to blame for that. Hamas is the one who put them amongst the civilians. Hamas is the one that took them from their homes. Hamas is the one that shot first at the Israelis that were trying to rescue the hostages. Hamas was the one throwing mortars, grenades, putting civilians between them and the enemy. Hamas was trying to block their exit. That's on Hamas. It is horrific, but the IDF, at least for this incident, bears zero blame for this. At least
Yeah,
from the evidence I have seen.
that's fair. The only pushback I would give is because I feel like this is you're correct in this instance, but I do feel like
Other
this is becoming a
incidences, we can have a different conversation because
yeah,
the
yeah, but I feel
IDF
like
does
that
terrible
that is
things.
becoming
Yeah.
a bit of a catch-all. Every time there's like civilian deaths, it's like, well, the Hamas is to blame. They're using human shields, they're doing this, they're doing that. Where to the point where
Oh, is
it's
my
very
gain too high
difficult
on
to
my mic?
even
Hold on.
even judge critically the actions of Israel.
No, I
Um,
think you're right in that. I agree with you
yeah,
in that. That it has become a catch-all, right? It's like the boy who cried wolf. and I agree that this is used as a shield and as an excuse far too many times. However, in this incident, it's just correct, and yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I do need to look more into the details of it, but taking it at face value, like I can't make that determination. And it is, it is tragic. As I said, civilians are always there. Civilian deaths always outnumber combatants like 10-1 or something, right? It's something horrific, but
Yes.
yeah, it is something I need to look more into. So I'm going to hold off on a strong opinion on that for now.
Sure. And we will get more information that comes out, right? Like this incident happened this Saturday, okay? So we won't have a full picture for a little bit. And it's possible as more information comes out, as we receive more actual like on the ground data, as we see more video evidence, as more reports come in, it could be the case that it turns out the IDF actually did do some terrible things in this. Maybe. We haven't seen evidence of this. And so, again, from the evidence I have seen to this date, they planned the operation with the intent of rescuing the hostages, which, again, hugely important crux of the argument here was to save lives. They purposely used they tried to sneak in to avoid a firefight, again, to lessen casualties both on their end and the enemies, and to make sure that the hostages were most likely to be safe. And it was Hamas that initiated, started, and began the firefight. That is what I know from what I have seen so far. If the information coming in changes that, I might change my opinion. But as of now, today, that's where I stand.
Yeah, fair enough. And as I mentioned, I'm gonna hold
Okay.
off on saying anything on that for now.
Sure. Thank you for calling in. Anything else?
Yeah. No, I think that's it. Appreciate you.
To the void, gang. To the void. Yeah. So, and this is the thing. It's not an easy question to answer because, again, we're talking in the hypothetical here where the IDF did disguise themselves as aid workers. There are risks to doing this, and there are real dangers to doing this. It puts people at risk. It absolutely does. You just have to bite that bullet. That's true. But it comes to the question, what do you value more? Do you value the immediate saving of people more? Or do you value like this hypothetical, down the line, potential risks? It's a balancing act, right? It's a balancing act. Because I think that everyone, if they're being honest with themselves, has a ratio, right? Well, I would risk 10 future lives to save one current life. Or maybe the ratio is reversed. I would risk 5 future lives to save 10 current lives, right? Maybe the ratio is reversed. And everyone has to make that calculation. For me, personally, I value the people who are in danger now, right? And if your objective isn't to kill the enemy, but to rescue the people who are in danger now, then I think that I make allowances for that. But let's bring on the next caller. Is my volume still too low? Damn it, hold on, give me a second. I see you. Let's see, advanced operation problem desktop audio. Oh god. Let me pull it up, pull it up, pull it up, pull it up, pull it up. Give me a second. Is that better? Can you hear me better now, gang? Is it better? I hope so. Hey, you're live.
Hey, Wick, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. I don't know how off topic you want to be from what you were just talking about.
No, it's call-in show, so you can call in about whatever you like. What you got?
Awesome. So, I don't know how long ago it was, but you were having a debate panel. I think it was mainly over masculinity, and me and my girlfriend actually ended up watching it for quite some time.
Bringing
Uh,
couples together. Go on.
oh yeah, for sure. We both stream together from time to time, so it's a bit fun from time to time. Also, yes, your volume is decent. had a bit of a moment, but no, it's all good. Yeah, I've got a bit of a quandary, and maybe you can help me out a little bit while I pick your brain, if that's cool.
The floor is yours, sir. I'm here to assist in whatever manner I can.
Awesome. So, I don't know how much relationship experience you have, but from time to time, and maybe chat can help him with this one as well. From time to time, I feel like I'm talking down to my other half. I feel like some of the cadence that I have is quite condescending, and hopefully that's
Your
not the way
accent.
that isn't.
It's your accent. But go on,
It
please.
is. I'm also half Swedish, hence the name Rune. So yeah, I think it comes across that way as well. But obviously we're both British, so it's not picked up on so much. But I think the issue mainly that I'm having is not knowing properly how to go about conversations that don't sound really childish. So it's a bit of a tough one because there's a few things that I like to think that I'm quite logically brained, and she hates me for it, is that I don't emphasize with a lot of emotional side of things. But I was hoping that maybe there'd be some input on how to go about those kind of more difficult conversations.
So I guess the first question I'd ask, is this a concern that you have or a concern that she has brought to you?
A bit both.
Bit of both. What has she said on the subject?
That I can be quite cold, and I'm very blunt and very straight to the point.
Okay. Without seeing specific examples of how you interact, this is going to be a shot in the dark. So keep what I
Go
say
for it.
with a grain of salt, please. Right?
I'm
Again,
taking it with the most broadest of broads, don't worry.
brilliant. That said, I think that there are certain ways we can approach difficult conversations that are de-escalatory, that are disarming, but still honest, forthright, and you can be upfront with your feelings. I think that one of the things that is I find when I'm talking to someone, whether I be in a relationship with them or romantically or simply professionally or from a friendship perspective, if I am going to disagree strongly with something someone is saying, or if I am bringing forth a criticism towards them, one of the things I do is I like to sandwich it. And what I mean by that is I start off by saying how much I value them, I care about them. I start positive. I give my concerns, but then I end positive as well. And the sandwich method tends to reinforce the fact that, hey, you are important to me. This issue is also important to me, but I want to make sure that you know that you're important to me too. I don't know if that helps or if that might disarm some of this condescension she feels. But yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, no, I appreciate it massively. The chat has also helped quite a lot. The people's elbow that I just noticed as well put in a really good point for the instincts of engaging in conversation where he feels compelled to, with no good reason, to saturate every sentence. That is very much close, so I appreciate that. And yeah, what you said, yeah, the disarming aspect of going about a conversation, I think I have trouble with anyway because I just want to figure out like solutions to problems rather than going about it that way.
And I make
Anyway,
sense.
I didn't want
Go
for it.
yeah, and it makes sense because there are certain things that are time sensitive, right? Like where there's an issue and it needs to be addressed now. And I think that it can be, I know I have this tendency to just solve the problem and then worry about the after effect later. That's not necessarily the best tendency. This is a tendency I have.
Yeah, no, I did. Don't worry.
But yeah, I think that like just being aware of that tendency and working to mitigate it by simply tone actually matters a lot here too, right?
Yeah, not the content of what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you're being snappy and snippy or extra loud or something, or like commanding, if you will, it can come across bad. So I think moderating tone. Again, haven't seen your guys' interaction. I don't know, but that's my general advice. Anything else?
Okay. Not so closely related to that one. What's the I'm going to be sticking around for the debate later. What's the main outcome that you're hoping for? Just a decent conversation or some sort of mini resolution to bring it back on track?
Well, so I like Staxiums. I've met Staxiums in person. He's a good guy. I'm friendly towards him. I don't know if I'd call him my friend because I gatekeep that word a lot. But what I hope
Hey,
to
all our
have,
interactions
yeah.
online are friends, okay? We're all friends here.
But one of the things I try to do, right, with these conversations is try to figure out where he's coming from, and also successfully, I hope, get across my position, which is, to be clear, that there is a higher law at play. That sometimes, in order to do good, we have to be willing to break laws, and
Mhm.
even international law. I think those are rare circumstances, very, very rare, but I don't think we should worship the law, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but I'm kind of half drawing a blank.
Well,
Are you talking more along the lines of Hamas should be, or that because they're not interpreting the law on a local level, that they're not really, so they're not applying the international side of
I'm
things?
gonna give you a really simple example.
Okay, go for it.
Would you steal a loaf of bread to feed your family?
Personally, yes.
Well, yes. I think anyone who lets their kids starve because they aren't
Mhm.
willing to break the law to steal, it's a problem, right? So again, I know this is a blank room question. We're ignoring context here, but I think that
Mhm.
illustrates the dilemma.
Mhm.
That sometimes laws can get in the way of doing something that is just good. And there are important reasons to have laws. I'm not advocating for the destruction of order here, but I do think that there are times and incidences, both on the personal level, the national stage, and the international stage, where individuals, institutions, and governments should keep in mind that there should be a higher law at play. And is that based on my morality? Hell yeah, it is, because the reason it's my morality is because I think it's right. If I
Yeah, of
change my
course.
mind, then I'll change my morality, right? But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
of
I
course.
think.
Okay, do you think you're gonna get stuck in the weeds then when it comes to applying local, smaller laws rather than the international itself? Is that the
I don't know. We'll find out.
okay?
It'll
Yeah.
be a mystery to me, right? We'll see.
Yeah. Hopefully not, because I would hope that there would be some sort of good faith engagement with. Obviously I would hope that you would do so, but I'm a
Yeah.
fan of you, so
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm
I like
biased.
Staxioms too. To be clear, I have every confidence that Staxioms will engage in a good faith manner. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, I won't take up too much more of your time. I appreciate your time and have fun with the debate and talk to everyone else.
Thank you later. Bye.
See ya.
Hey, you're live. If you're speaking, we can't hear you. Uh-oh. Do you need some time to fix your audio? Because we can't hear you still. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you back, and you're going to fix your audio. I'm going to bring in the other guest, and then we'll get you soon. I'll see you later, buddy. Oh, well, unfortunate. Hey, you're live.
Hey, what's up, Wick? Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, Blacktoid? How's it
How
going?
you doing? It's going good. Well, it's going okay. This is just get shit off your chest day, right?
Yeah, it's Collins until 7 at least, so get
All
it
right.
off your chest, buddy.
Well, I won't take too long, but you know my thoughts on Biden. Not a big fan. Think he's kind of a joke, but of course, we can disagree on that. But one thing that I think maybe we can agree on, I don't know. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on this. I think the whole Hunter Biden shit is really dumb. And I think it's dumb for a whole bunch of reasons. The first reason is it's really dumb is that Hunter Biden's not Joe Biden, right? That's the first reason it's dumb. But the second reason why it's dumb is my dude got found guilty today of 3 felony gun charges because he bought a gun while in the midst of happening to be using cocaine. Why the fuck is that even a crime? That's my question.
Well,
Is there an asterisk in the Second Amendment that says, "Oh, you lose the ability to own a firearm, you lose the right if you just happen to be using drugs. This is a bizarre standard. It's a stupid law. It's a stupid standard, and I think it's unconstitutional. I
So
actually think that Hunter Biden's charges should be reversed on constitutional grounds. All the laws should be stricken down on this. This is complete bullshit.
let's examine this a little bit. First of all, do you think did you I saw this misinformation out earlier that Trump was gonna pardon Hunter Biden. And
I was so excited about that.
I was
Yeah.
actually kind of afraid because that, my friends, not to give any ammo to the enemy here, but or free advice to the enemy, but if Trump did that, that would be one of the most clever ploys politically, because one, him just saying it doesn't, like, Trump lies all the time, right? Trump doesn't have to actually do it, but him saying it and kind of performing as if he would disarms a lot of criticism against him. Not all of it, obviously, but it also kind of gives him the initiative and say, hey, look, I think this kind of charge is bullshit, and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. Obviously, Trump's retarded, so he didn't actually do that, but I was worried for a second that oh man, someone gave him some really good fucking advice. But anyway, let's talk about the gun laws. Do you agree that there's any law you could break that we probably shouldn't sell you a gun?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you give us some examples of what you think those laws would be?
Yeah, I think somebody convicted of a violent felony, especially one involving the use of a weapon, should probably lose their rights to firearms. I don't think that non-violent felonies should result in an immediate loss of someone's right to have firearms. As it is right now, even if you commit like felony tax fraud or something dumb, you lose your right to a firearm, which I think is ridiculous.
Sure. Let me I guess rephrase the question, because I agree with you on this. Do you think that someone could be in any kind of state at all where we should not sell someone a gun? Like, whether it be an emotional state, inebriated. Like, say you own a gun store, someone comes in and talks about how depressed they are, how they hate life, and they just want to kill themselves. Do you sell that person a gun?
I don't know if that's enough to overwhelm the Second Amendment, frankly.
Really?
Now, would I sell them the gun? Probably not. But keep in mind, like, I understand where you're going. Like, there's certain facts that are so egregious that it's like, well, obviously we can't sell this person a gun. But from what my understanding is of this trial, it's not even that aggravated, right? So it's not even like he walked into the gun store, like, cracked out, shaking, demanding, like, hollow points. That wasn't really what happened. What happened was he went in to buy a gun, which every red-blooded American has the right to do. It's not a privilege, it's a right. And in filling out the form, because the ATF, I have some thoughts about the ATF. They, they put all these dumb requirements in which, like, they inquire into your personal life and they judge you, and they say that you don't get to exercise your right if you don't fulfill what we think. Of course, this is complete bullshit, and I think unconstitutional. But I'm obviously loading this, and just because somebody happens to have drugs at home or has a history of using drugs is not the same thing as going in and acquiring a gun while you are currently under the influence. Here's an example. I follow the law. I have alcohol in my house, as many Americans do. It's different for me to get fucked up on Friday, still have alcohol in my house, and go buy a gun on Wednesday. That's different than me getting fucked up on Friday, going in and buying a gun on Friday, right? Now I'm in possession of a gun when I'm totally drunk. Okay, arguably there's a problem there. But why is it a problem for me to get drunk on a Friday and then I'm not drunk on Wednesday? Why can't I buy a gun on Wednesday?
So I'm at a disadvantage here. I am not familiar with the facts of the case. As I understand it, he lied on a form.
Yeah. So when you go to buy a gun, and I know
he
this.
lied in order to cheat to
Right.
get around the law. Look. again, we talked just in the previous segments about how I'm cool with breaking the law when it comes to like saving a life or something. I'm not cool with breaking a law just to get something you want. And I
No,
think
it was
that
to exercise
whether,
a right, Wick.
again, whether or not, right, whether or not you think that should have been the law, he decided, right, to violate that, to put his wants and desires above the law. And yeah, does that deserve a felony charge? I don't know, but it deserves something. I think we should enforce that, right?
In this case, I don't think so. When
Just
you,
because of the
those
right thing, right? Because of the
yeah,
Second
because of
Amendment,
the
right?
right thing, absolutely, because of the Second Amendment.
But
Look,
you
when
would,
go
but you would say if it was a situation where he just wanted to get into a movie and he lied about, like, I don't know, his age or something. You know what I mean? Like in another situation that didn't involve a right, if he lied and perjured himself like that, he should be charged. If there was laws in place saying you shouldn't lie on that.
Look,
particular thing.
just to be clear, right now I understand that the law is against Hunter Biden. Okay, I'm not denying that. Just in terms of analysis of the current law as is currently interpreted, he's fucked. All right, it's just as it is. But the point I'm trying to make is that him being fucked is the end result of a lot of missteps in American jurisprudence and a lot of ignoring of the Commerce Clause, misrepresentation of the Commerce Clause, ignoring the Second Amendment, trampling the Second Amendment, and the end result here is somebody getting in trouble for trying to exercise their right uh, when they happen to be doing drugs at a different time. I mean, I filled out these forms before, Wick. They're ridiculous. One of the questions they ask you is whether or not you're a fugitive from justice. It's a stupid questionnaire. And what does it mean to be a fugitive from justice? What does it mean to be a current user of drugs? I mean, it's kind of up for interpretation, right? If I used drugs last Wednesday, am I a drug user today? Maybe, according to this case, they're arguing that he was, but
I mean,
it's
let's
not
be
so
clear.
clear.
Hunter Biden was a a cocaine addict, right? Like that. At least that seems pretty clear to me. I think that you can make the argument that yes, it could be worded better, or maybe in certain circumstances, like if you used cocaine on one day and then the next day, like if that's the only time you used it. But as I understand, Hunter Biden had a history of cocaine use. Am I wrong in that? Again,
No,
I'm
he
at a
absolutely did.
disadvantage because I don't know the facts of the case here. But as I understood, and as it's been reported to me, he had a history of cocaine use. It was a habitual thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You are right. He absolutely had and he wrote about it in his book. He absolutely had an addiction to cocaine.
So
There's no doubt about that. Now, that
in
being
that
said,
case, right? Like in that case, there's no ambiguity with how he should have answered that question.
so I disagree. I think that there is some level of ambiguity the way the questions are phrased. I think that the jury looked at that and decided that he had essentially lied. I personally am a little bit skeptical as to whether or not he lied, knowing about how those questions are framed. But even if it was the case that he lied, how I see it is sure, legally he's in the wrong, whatever. But on principle, what the law should be in accordance with the Constitution as the Second Amendment was written. I think it's a ridiculous concept that because you happen to be using substances other than at the moment that you're in possession of the gun or other than at the moment that you're buying the gun, that all of a sudden that that's a felony if you don't admit to that. Because if you admit to that, they're not going to let you exercise your Second Amendment rights. They're not going to let you purchase a firearm. So he was put in a position where either he gets the Second Amendment right or he has to lie in this bullshit ATF form. And he did lie. And I think that was a brave move. I think that I hope that he gets no jail time. In fact, I think Trump should pardon him. I think Joe Biden should pardon him. I know that the Republicans would throw a fit, but this is a situation here that I genuinely think that Cato, for example, has come out in favor of Hunter Biden on this, right? Cato has like a lot of good shit, and on this they're absolutely correct. This concept that just because you happen to use substances, you lose your Second Amendment right.
Is Hunter
I mean,
Biden
Wick,
a hero?
I don't know if I'd go as far as a hero like Kyle
I want to
Rittenhouse
get
or
the
whatever.
clip, dude. But fair enough. Okay.
But I would. But here, let me ask you this, Wick. Explain to me the logic of in America. Why is it the case that let's say for example that I was a total alcoholic and I was like drinking a fifth of vodka
Aren't
every
you
single
Canadian?
day. Okay.
But go ahead.
Oh my god. a fifth of vodka every single day. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Explain to me how it makes sense that on the one day I don't get drunk, I can go in and I can buy 5 semi-automatic rifles and bring them home and then continue getting drunk with the guns in my house. But if I smoke a joint the same week that I go buy a gun, that's against the law. Can you
So-
explain the logic here?
I can't. And if your advocacy is that we need to reform these laws in order to make them more transparent, more common sense, to lessen some restrictions, we can have that discussion, right? Depending on what you want to do, right? I think there are some good restrictions that we can have when it comes to selling firearms to people. I think the right should have limits in certain cases. I think we could all, well, maybe not you, right? But I think most people could agree if you're on a terrorist watch list, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun, right? There are certain situations where we're like, okay, right? Maybe you could at least have to wait a little more longer, right? But this isn't what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is someone who, again, knowing that they knowingly lied on this form, and I think the jury proved that, chose to break this law, whether he thought it was unjust or not. He chose to break this law, and I think in this instance, we should enforce that. Now, if we want to change it later, by all means, we can have that discussion. But I think in the case of Hunter Biden, he did break the law, and there should be some consequences. Whether he should get jail time or not, I don't know, right? I don't know the specifics. But yeah, I just disagree that he should be pardoned.
Okay, last thing I'll say.
Please.
Well, I mean, the founding fathers, they were hemp growers. They were putting cocaine in their drinks, Coca-Cola. You know, I'm not sure that was around in 1770, but there was definitely cocaine elsewhere. They had opiums in the cold medicines. I don't believe that the people who wrote the Second Amendment intended for you to automatically lose your right to firearms just because you happen to be using substances. This is not the case. This has never been the case until we start becoming a moralistic society that has abandoned our constitutional principles. And I think we should interpret the Second Amendment from the viewpoint of the time that it was written. And if at that time they were not enforcing it this way, the fact that we can enforce it this way, I think is a travesty of justice. I really do hope that Hunter Biden has a very lenient sentence. I actually do feel sympathy for him, even though I don't do drugs. And also Nick Rakita as well. I also have sympathy for him. I think that these people are being unjustly targeted by the ATF because the ATF is awful and really does nothing but unfairly target people. Terrible organization, 3-letter government agency, and conservatives need to be more angry at this. They rightfully complain when 3-letter agencies go after Donald Trump and his allies, but for some reason, when it's Hunter Biden, they don't give a shit, and it's a real problem. There's such a good opportunity for a consistent, principled optics win here, and the Republicans, just out of their sheer hatred for Biden, are completely missing it, and it's disgusting, and I hate it.
I'll say this, then I'll let you go. Lactoid, one of the reasons I like you, and one of the reasons I keep bringing you on, is because you are a principled actor. We disagree on some things, that's fine, but I know that you're always going to give me your honest take, and you're always going to give me what you believe are your principles in these things, and I really do appreciate that, and I stand it. In this instance, I don't know if I agree with you, but here we are. Thank you for calling in, buddy. I'll see you later, buddy.
Thanks, Wick. Thanks.
And that's just it. Before I bring in the next caller, I'll give him a little more chance to fix his audio. This principle, right, of standing by your convictions, even when it will benefit those who you don't like, is something that is missing today from politics and in general in the culture, right? A lot of people will overlook bad actors and bad actions because they happen to personally like them or be on their team. A lot of people will take things that they normally would think are fine, but then weaponize it against their enemies. And it's hypocritical all the way down. All sides do this. This isn't a left versus right thing. This is a thing. Centrists do it too. Like, this is something everyone does. And it's rare to find people like Lactoid, not to suck his dick too much, right? But it's rare to find people that like Lactoid who will have principled stances like this. And so when I do find someone like that, I like to highlight it. I like to put it on display, and I like to elevate that kind of voice. I try. I'm not perfect at it, obviously, but I try to be that kind of person. I try to be that kind of person to put my principles ahead of my politics. But it is what it is. Bring on the next guest. Hello, you're live.
Hi. Hello.
Oh, we
Did
can
I
hear you now.
unfuck
What's
everything? Yeah, sorry. I checked every setting twice, except for having push to talk on, which yeah, LOL.
up?
Um yeah, I was calling in to follow up on something you said very offhandedly on a panel the other day about how like you don't think men have a greater struggle to identify and express and talk about their emotions?
Can you repeat that? What did I say? Apparently, I'm not saying I didn't say that. I want to be clear.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Or sorry, this isn't a direct like word for word quote, but it was just like, oh, like I'm getting tired of people saying that like men have a hard time like like feeling or expressing their emotions. Something along the lines of that, or I mean,
I'm trying to remember. I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a few days.
mhm.
But I believe what I said, and what I absolutely stand by, is that I think that men like aren't people like to say that men are pressured to like keep their feelings to themselves, not show emotion. I don't think so. Not really. I think that culturally, that may have been the case years and years and years and years ago. But even then, I think men have always been encouraged to express their emotions in certain ways. Not always, obviously. What they've been encouraged to keep to themselves is one specific emotion: anger. That's always been frowned upon. But give me what you got.
Or I mean, I guess like I don't know, like pressured is like a strong word. Like I don't feel like men are often given like the opportunity or like I feel like boys are definitely offered that opportunity less, like or are prone to that. Like like 40 to 60% of boys are being told that like like any emotion besides being angry is gay. And the rest of them like like I don't know. That's where like maybe the pressure to not apply anger or to not express anger might uh
I
come out.
I will admit that my upbringing was different than most. I was raised in a loving two-parent home, in a religious home where it was encouraged actually to express emotions in certain instances. Not all incidents. And I was taught, as were my sisters, to you need to learn to control yourself. And I think self-control is a different thing than being emotionless. And I think people
Yeah.
mix that up. But I would disagree with you that society encourages men to be emotionless. I think what they do encourage men, and they should encourage men, is to have some self-control, have some restraint. And I think that's a great thing. Restraint is actually good.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that's like part of it, but I guess like I don't know. I don't feel like I feel like a growing amount of society doesn't really like care about men's emotions. Like I mean, I don't know.
That might be
Especially
true as well, right?
right,
There
right.
are portions of the left, and there are portions of the manosphere, and there are portions of women who just don't give a shit about men. I will agree
Right,
with
right.
that. They don't
Right.
care.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess like I don't know. I have some papers, some charts and graphs and figures, but like yeah, I don't know. Like there's a barrier to men seeking therapy or seeking or receiving effective therapy because it's hard to find, like if you didn't have this
No,
sort of
that's true.
upbringing,
Yes.
like your emotional vocabulary, you
Because
can't go to
therapy is
couples
developed for
therapy,
women.
right?
Therapy
Or
is developed
well,
for women. And so
or no, just like men lack a lot of. I don't think boys are taught like the same
no,
like
we don't
breadth of
express our
tools.
emotions the same as women. That's true.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's
Also
not
that.
doesn't mean we're emotionless, right? We
Yeah,
speak
yeah,
a different language. There are
yeah,
two
yeah.
reasons, in my opinion, right? Wick opinion here. There are two reasons that therapy is less effective for men overall. One is most therapists are women. And there is a disconnect there. And I think that coupled with your very true statement that there's a growing segment of the population who just doesn't give a shit about men and doesn't see men as actual people, I think that plays into that, right? That feeds into that. And there are women who will refuse to be therapists for incels, right? Because they feel fear, because, and this fear may be warranted, to be clear, right? This all may be above board. This isn't a moral failing on the part of the therapist, but it is a fact that there are therapists who simply will not treat certain men like who are really struggling with certain conditions because they can't, like they
Right.
either feel too much fear or these things. The second reason that I think therapy is less effective for men overall is that it's developed and designed to appeal to women, and that women speak that same language, right? Men speak it differently. Again, therapy can be very, very effective for men, but it has to be. It can't be it's not a one size fits all, is what I'm trying to say. We can't just say, here's therapy, and that does nothing. Therapy has to be to the targeted audience, and I don't think that the way that men are being targeted is working.
Yeah, so yeah, I super duper agree with all of that. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of relationship issues caused by like men like feeling outgunned by going to like couples therapy, and like yeah, I don't know, like a lot of barriers to like like I don't know, like I guess more often than not, like needing more like guidance and needing like a more like active therapist, like compared to because like I don't know, like men tend to like externalize their emotions and like I don't know, I don't know if that's a societal thing or like a biology thing, but like like they are like oh emotions are problems to be solved and like like yeah therapy is geared
Some
more
are.
towards women where it's about
Mm,
like feeling things and being mindful and
yeah.
present and like yeah.
I think, like, and this might be a hot take, but I think that men could benefit from being more like women, and women can benefit from being more like men. And what I mean when I say that is that I think that men can learn some lessons that women internalize better, right? Just naturally. And by putting ourselves in their shoes, not literally, I'm not trying to trans you all, okay? Come on, calm down. But I think the same goes for women. And what's happening though is we are seeing this kind of separation, this kind of like seeing each other as the enemy, and that needs to stop. One of the greatest examples of this recently was the man versus bear discourse, where a lot of women were asked, who would you rather meet when you are alone in the woods hiking? Would you rather come across a man or a bear? And 9 out of the 10 women asked said bear. And I think that this is because women and society has reinforced this in various ways, that women see men as a threat and the enemy. And reciprocally, conversely, I should say, women or men see women as a threat as well. And look at the manosphere, look at Andrew Tate, look at the red pill, certain segments of the red pill and things like that. They see women as an obstacle, a threat. And I think that this is doing harm to our culture, doing harm to our society. I'll give you final thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I might DM you some papers about normative male alexithymia and like the spread of this, just because like, or yeah, whatever. But yeah, I feel like the data kind of shows that like yeah, men have a harder time talking about their emotions.
Are
And
people
yeah,
still
that's all.
saying my mic's messed up? What's wrong with my sound, gang? What is going on?
Oh, okay. It sounded weird, like kind of echoey and tinny, but like it it doesn't sound that way like on Discord, but it sounds that way like on stream.
Echoey and
Sorry.
I'll look into it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
thank you.
Sorry.
It's not your fault. I'll see you later, buddy.
For sure. Take care. We'll keep.
Yeah, I don't tap on my mic. Is this better, gang? Is this like what? Okay, let's fix this before I bring in the other caller. What is wrong? The gain is low. I have it up. Let's look. I don't know. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, just a bomb. Let's see. Properties. See if we can fix this, Kings. Is it low or high? What's going on? backwards? I don't know. What does backwards mean when it comes to sound? I have the correct mic pattern selected. I've turned it up. Is it angled the right way? I think so. I don't know. Oh man, I don't know. The polar pattern is on. What is the... You're using these terms. I don't know what that means. Lean back from the mic. So is this better or worse? But yeah, the polar pattern is on. The doohickeys are in the wrong position in regards to their solar alignment. I'm not a tech guy. You gotta treat me like I'm 3, okay? Come on. It's backwards. What does backwards mean? Oh, God. Let me bring on Soya. Hello, you're live.
Hey.
Hey.
All right. We're going to fix this.
Are we going to fix it?
We are. No, I actually got paid to do this. So, your microphone has a pickup pattern. It's called polar. So it
Okay.
rejects noise from one direction and accepts it from the other. Turn it around so that blue light is facing you. Now speak into it.
Is this better or worse?
Oh my God. That's so much better.
Oh, no, I got to figure out how to... Oh, here. Okay, how's this now? Is this better or worse?
We fixed it, chat. We fixed it,
Okay.
chat. I would like to thank Seattle Esports Studio for my training.
Okay,
Enjoy
well...
your show.
Have a great night. I feel so stupid. No, it's good that it's fixed. It's good that it's fixed. Here, let me adjust things so we can turn this down a little bit. Oh God. Okay. Okay. I think we fixed it, gang. Hopefully it's better. Hopefully it's great. Yeah, professional streamer, everyone. Is it a new mic? I've had this for a couple months now. I've been using it wrong this whole time. No one else decided to notice that. I don't know. I don't know what to say, gang. I feel like I have to apologize for my bad behavior here, okay? For my dumbness, if you will. Let's find out. We are waiting on Staxiums at this point. We have a few more minutes. What do you guys want to talk about for the next 5 minutes or so? What do you guys want to know? Right? Let's see if we can't. You guys want to see you guys want to see a dead body? You guys want to see a dead body? Okay, give me a second. Let me see if I can show this to you. Okay. You guys want to see a dead body? Oop, let's turn that down. So this motherfucker here decided to come at me again. Always quote tweeting me. He's always starting shit. Okay, he's always quoting tweeting me. And he saw my promo tweet about tonight's debate, and he accused me of wanting to kill children. So I clapped back and I said, no, to save hostages. Would you kill someone to save the life of a child? Sunday wouldn't do it, but he'd make sure to tweet out how horrible it was. Got to get that bag, right? Bro, I made this guy big mad. They're actually killing hostages too. You're justifying killing kids to kill kids. You have the spiritual constitution of a pedophile. Yeah, he's going in, right? Quote tweet. Like, dude, boy's mad today. I think I hit a little too close to home. But damn, yeah, like calling me a pedophile because I called him out for monetizing dead kids. Woof. Anyway, just wanted to throw that in tonight. I thought it was funny. But yeah, hit dog hollers, I guess. Let me turn that off for now. Yeah, let me see. Let me make sure Staxiums has the invite to the server. I think he's already in the server. Well, let's make sure. Oh, he keeps wanting to debate me, and I don't want anything to do with this guy, right? Like, I don't want to talk to him. I might change my mind if he begs me. Like, if he begs. I don't think I would, but I might. He doesn't know. So if he really wants to talk to me and he wants to own me in the marketplace of ideas, he can beg. I'd like to see it. I wonder if he will. Let's find out. Yeah, Staxiums, come on in if you're watching. Let's talk. Aircraft Sparky says, I want to debate the Israel hostage rescue, and I understand the laws of armed combat. Well, the hypothetical here is, so to be frank, to be clear, everyone, I don't think the IDF actually violated the laws of armed combat. The evidence I have seen, what the IDF, the operation that they performed on Saturday, looks to be just above board, right? It looks to have, they did it correctly. They did not violate the law. I've seen no evidence that they did. The accusation was that they committed perfidy in order to disguise them, or in order to rescue the hostages. And what that means is that they disguise themselves as non-combatants in order to get close to the hostages and rescue them, right? And but I've seen the videos that they released of the operation, at least a couple, and in those videos, the people they showed were in full combat gear. So I don't know, right? It looked like they were kitted out for combat to me. But the question would be, and this is a hypothetical, and I'm just killing time till Staxiums gets here, hopefully in the next minute or two. But the hypothetical would be, what if they did violate the laws of armed combat here? What if they actually did? What if they actually decided to dress up as aid workers in order to get close to the hostages and save them, right? Is that morally justified to break this law? Is it morally justified to dress up as a Red Cross workers in order to get close? Assuming it breaks the law, right? Is it morally justified? My argument tonight, that would be, in this specific instance, it would be. And I think I can prove that. I think that I can walk people through that. We had for those of you who were watching earlier, I had a little pre-debate debate with Testicle Johnson on this. And I think that at the end, he kind of agreed with me. In this specific instance, I think it was okay. But let's bring Staxiums on. Let's see where we go. Hi, how's it going? Yo, what's up, King? If you're talking, we can't hear you, King. Uh-oh. We fixed my audio. What about this? What about this, guys? Hello? Hello? I see you lighting up, but I don't hear you.
No?
Oh, shit. Now I do.
Hi,
Oh,
hi.
God damn it. Hold on.
Hello, Wick.
Wow,
I'm
you
so
are
sorry.
You are so loud. Hold on.
I'm spiking. I'm sorry about that.
You're so loud.
I'm trying to be quieter.
Sorry to everyone's eardrums here. It's okay. I turned you down on my end.
I can lower my gain. Okay.
Yeah, just a little, please.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Can we see you? Do we get the?
Oh, yeah.
of your
Sorry.
face?
Sorry.
Are you using the right mic?
Maybe not. Hold on one second. I'm sorry that everything is all over the place. Hi. There's my face. And then one sec. Yeah, the Yeti camera. Does it sound awful?
Just sounds super loud.
Hmm.
It doesn't sound bad. It just sounds loud. Here, I'll turn you down on my end. Keep talking.
Okay. Hello.
Keep going. You said one word.
My gain's up a little bit. Yeah, my gain's up a little bit. I just turned it down, so that should be better.
It is better. It is better.
Okay.
hopefully my audience, right? Hopefully my audience agrees. And gang, if he's too loud or I'm too soft or something's going wrong, let me know and I will adjust.
Yeah, please. I apologize. I just rewired all my settings, and it's sad to see that it looks like it didn't pan out well.
You know
Anyway,
what? It's okay. It's okay. How you doing, buddy? What's going on with you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to finally be mad at you because I feel
I'm
like
ready.
you usually have good takes. You usually are pretty based, in fact. But this, this tweet that you gave, we got to talk about it.
Okay. So
I mean, you saw my take, and
I
then you
did.
saw, yeah, and then I didn't really hear your response to it. So, I mean, your main claim was, we're gonna give a hypothetical. I think we're gonna live in the conversation a hypothetical that
Yeah,
Israel
because
did, in fact.
I just want to repeat for clarity.
Mhm.
There is no evidence that the IDF committed this
Right,
crime. Like
right.
as more comes out, it becomes less and less likely that they actually did this. So I just want to make that clear for everyone watching, that this is not something that actually happened. But
Right.
the accusation and the question was interesting to me.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But
So we'll live in the hypothetical that the IDF, in fact, operated as emergency aid workers to try to access Hamas areas, right? Is that fair to say that we'll just have to sort of live in this
Sure,
hypothetical
sure.
and then debate if that's viable? You think that that's okay, even though that's a war crime, which you admit that that's a war crime, right?
Is it okay? I don't know, but is it morally justified? Yes.
Well, that's what I'm asking on moral grounds, if it's okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I think, well, again, saying okay means I have no problem with it, or I think it's just hunky dory. No, but there
Sure,
are
sure.
just to be clear, right? Like I think sometimes it's okay to do what would in other contexts be a bad thing.
No, totally. I
because-
understand.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
okay.
would also say it's okay, and okay is a weird thing to say, for civilians to die in a war, right? As long as they're not targeted. I would obviously not prefer that to happen, but I recognize that it's a war and things might occur, right? Where civilians get harmed.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, morally justified is probably the word that we can use. So I appreciate you clarifying it. So yeah, why do you feel like it's okay to commit war crimes, Wick? I needed my clip for TikTok.
I got it. No, it's fine. So I guess I'll just ask you.
Yeah,
So let's start off and just to kind of get a baseline of where we're at.
sure.
There's a kid that is bleeding out
Uh-huh.
in your car, okay?
Yeah.
In order to get to the hospital in time, you're going to have to speed. You're going to have to
Oh,
run
okay,
some
wait,
red
yeah.
lights.
Sure.
Would you do
Sure.
it?
I want to be clear. I am not saying that it is not okay to commit. So the answer is yes. I would for
Okay.
sure speed 100%.
Okay.
And I am not arguing that we shouldn't commit war crimes on the grounds of legality, but on the grounds of morality.
Sure.
If there was some bullshit war crime that's like, hey, civilians can't die because you like in the middle of war, then I go, that's bullshit. That shouldn't be a part of the war crimes. It's not just like an automatic justification because it's a war crime. I feel like there are implications for the reasons why we have elevated some crimes to the status of war crimes that are it's so demonstrably accurate that we can't even have some glimpse of like peace or justified war if these get committed. That's why they've been elevated to that level, to that status. So I'm not saying because it's a war crime we can't do it. I'm saying I'm using I'm using war crime as like a shortcut to like, obviously we have determined that this is demonstrably bad for the world writ large. Does that make sense?
It does. No,
Okay.
and I don't disagree. Just to be clear, I'm not
Mhm.
arguing or advocating tonight that this what is written on the books about perfidy, the crime in question of
Mhm.
disguising yourself as a civilian or a non-combat person in order to carry out a combat operation. I am not arguing that law is bad, wrong, should be done away with. I think I
Mhm.
would agree with you. I think that it exists for a very good reason. I think violating it as a norm is a very bad thing. However, and here's where we get into it, right? And I think this is where it's going to be our differences, is
Right.
that there are contexts and circumstances which, for me, on a moral level, if I was in charge, if I was in the Knesset and I was called upon to authorize this operation, that in certain contexts, even knowing that it would violate the law of armed combat, violate international law, I would authorize that. Because
Sure.
I think that the higher law at play, especially for a nation to its citizens, is to rescue its people that are in danger. And I think that overrides the real risk, and I'm not trying to downplay it, but
Sure.
the real risks that common violation of this law would entail.
For sure. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with the morality of what you're saying. I just think the threshold needs to be way higher than you're acknowledging. And I do want to tell a story to just sort of like explain why I find this to be such a morally dangerous grounds that need to be fulfilled. Like, you need to be like saving the world if you do this kind of shit. So my wife works in international affairs, and she wrote, are you familiar with Tim Ballard? You grew up Mormon, right? Have you ever heard of this
I
guy?
know who he is.
Okay, cool. So Tim Ballard, for those who don't know, is kind of like this, like he goes into third world countries and he just like saves kids who have been sex trafficked, but like he kind of ignores a lot of the governments and does like a bunch of just like kind of reckless shit in order to get them back, and usually sort of makes the situation a lot worse after he does it. Is my personal belief about what he does. So my wife wrote a thesis sort of tracking OUR, Operation Underground Railroad, which is Tim Ballard is kind of a part of. And she was looking into Espanola. There's this small village that basically Tim Ballard had gone into and dressed as emergency aid people in order to like figure out what exactly the brothel looked like. They were looking into a brothel. And this is something that he openly admits. If you watch his movie, he like for sure he goes
I
into
saw
places.
is it The Sound of Freedom?
Sound of Freedom.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw
Do you
it.
remember
I saw
do
it.
you remember
It's a
where he
good
like sort
movie.
of dresses as like a first aid
Yeah,
employee in order to like get
familiar,
in?
yeah.
So essentially what happened right after that is they saved the 20 kids. They like put them into a thing. It didn't really work out because they didn't really give them a lot of resources, and the brothel like crops back up immediately. A new nonprofit comes in just moments later, looking for STI testing to like help the citizens of this town. And basically the entire city goes, no, we know what happened last time. You're people trying to dismantle our organization. You can't help them anymore. So I feel like once we break that sort of like first aid workers are not combatants, they are just there to help the citizens there. Once we break that idea, shit goes completely reckless. Like suddenly emergency aid, people who just want to go in for STI testing or for vaccines, right? Like a measles outbreak happens. We want to stop that. We need to get them into places where there's a lot of bad people in there, a lot of terrorist organizations. And it's like, hey, we don't really care about what the fuck you're doing here politically. We just want to make sure that all the civilians and military targets here too are just being accounted for, are just being vaccinated. Those people are suddenly not being able to be put into those places because of this threat that they might be military organizations. And sorry, one last thing. I just really want to highlight how much humanitarian aid is currently going into Palestine and how many fucking humanitarian aid workers are suddenly now being threatened or looked at differently because they might be IDF soldiers in disguise. And I think that's terrifying.
Let's pick at that particular point. There's a few threads I can pull on here, but let's pick at that particular point.
Okay.
Do you think that this wasn't broken before, that this is new? That
I
this
hear
is
you.
now happening? I take umbrage to that. Let's remember where some of these hostages were found.
Oh, of course.
Okay?
Of course.
This
of course.
relationship between civilian, aid worker, and
100%.
it's broken.
Wick,
Already in that instance.
Wick, if you ever hear me ever trying to defend Hamas, you have heard wrong. I just want to let you know.
I'm not implying that you are.
For sure. But I just want to be clear, in the scale of who is committing the more war crimes, the IDF or Hamas, it is Hamas.
No,
so I for sure agree that it's not even close. But what I'm saying is we can't magnify that problem. It's not a binary on or off.
One, I don't think that the risks of the magnification that this operation entailed would meaningfully magnify that problem. I don't think it would.
You
I
don't
don't
think
think
that
it's going to.
you don't think that it's possible that humanitarian aid workers now, when they're going into Gaza, Hamas isn't going to do second looks at them
It's
to make sure?
it's possible. I just don't think it's likely in this situation that they will be under more scrutiny or meaningfully more scrutiny than they are. The likelihood matters here. Is it possible? I just have to concede that it is. And like I said, in the abstract, in general, outside of this region, right? I'll cop to everything you're saying that yes, and there's a lot of places.
Sure.
But all I know is that me personally, right, as a moral actor, if I can save 4 people who are being held hostage by Hamas, and if I have to disguise myself in order to do that, I'm going to do that every single time.
But I think my point is you are now endangering the lives of every other humanitarian aid worker who is in Gaza, whose lives are already pretty high risk as is. Like, I just can't think of a more like worthy of protecting people than the humanitarian aid workers in Gaza. Like, that is like, they need to be able to get in there and save the people who need to be at risk. Because is Hamas psycho? Yes, because they're not even looking for the Palestinian people who they're not even looking out for the lives of the Palestinian people, but the humanitarian aid workers are. And I just are you saying that Hamas is already so critical of humanitarian aid workers that
yes, if you're critical of Hamas in any way, shape, or form, if they suspect you of being anything, right, they will kill you. It's why a lot of there's this weird relationship in Gaza specifically between humanitarian aid workers and Hamas that you have to be, you kind of have to be at least appear neutral towards Hamas to get in there, right? And I understand there's some weird kind of morality things in there. And I think it is brave for the aid workers that are working in there. They are brave, but there's been some fuckery, right, already between Hamas and the aid workers.
You mean by Hamas, right?
And the aid workers, right? Again,
what
look
do
at
you
where
mean?
some of these
I'm not familiar
hostages were found, right? One of the people who was holding these hostages, who was killed in the rescue operation, was a journalist, and the other was a doctor for one of these.
100%,
right?
100%.
So these aid organizations, quote unquote, right, like are already there's some fuckery going around with that. So this sanctity of aid workers has been broken already. This is broken already. So if you are in this situation in this region, I think that doesn't eliminate it, but I think that should play into your consideration of your moral calculus here. Does that make sense?
I hear you, but I don't think. How do I say this? I don't think, one, it's not a binary, right? We acknowledge that, right? Like, trust
Sure, of course not.
humanitarian aid workers is lower in Israel and Palestine, obviously, in Gaza specifically, right?
Sure.
But it could go lower. We acknowledge that together, right?
Yeah, no, it could. And there's risk. Like, I'm not trying to dismiss the risk. I am just saying that the now outweighs the hypothetical future in my moral calculation.
Right. Are we assuming that there's no other way to extract these hostages? Like, because what I would say is,
What other way would
that might be the most. I mean, just like a surgical attack. Like, I think it would be more casualties.
Okay.
It would be more casualties, right? That this is probably the safest, quote unquote, way to do this. But I think that safety is outweighed by the potential risk that is now being put on all of the humanitarian aid workers. If I had a choice of who should bear the brunt of that risk, it would be the soldiers over the civilians every time. I'm going to make that choice every time.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. Like, look, let me rewind a bit, just a smidge to kind of help you out, and to help the conversation out. So, a few months ago, there was reporting, and I'm not sure how accurate the reporting was, but let's just assume it's accurate for the
Okay.
sake of this discussion, that the IDF disguised themselves as doctors, nurses, and patients in order to infiltrate a hospital in order to kill Hamas leadership that was apparently hanging out there.
Yep.
I condemn that and still condemn that action. I think that there was no justification for that. I think that using perfidy in order to kill is a much, much different moral calculus than a mission
Than
whose objective is
Extracting
to save.
hostages. Sure.
And I think that changes things drastically. $10 from Pondering Politics to say my favorite Jill Stein stand
Hey!
versus my favorite Supreme Court simp. I don't know who I'm rooting for. Well, thank you for the $10. But at the end of the day, I'm going to cop to all your incidences, and I'm not trying to argue that we should overturn this law, but I'm going to ask you directly.
Mm-hmm.
You're the judge at the ICJ. These people were brought up in on charges before you. The people who risked their lives to rescue these hostages.
Mm-hmm.
They did dress as aid workers.
Mm-hmm.
They saved the lives of their people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you convict them?
Obviously. Unquestionably.
Really?
100%. And you wouldn't? Wait,
No,
hold
I
on.
would not.
Wait, hold on. I'm so
Or whether
confused.
I would not punish them. I might say, yeah, I was guilty, but I'm going to let you off.
Didn't you say that this law should... Oh, this is so interesting to me.
No, this specific situation.
This
I'm
is
talking
so
about
interesting
this
to me.
specific situation.
I thought you were... Hold on. Sorry. I'm trying to format my thoughts. That's such a surprising answer for you
Why?
that you wouldn't convict. Because I thought what you said is this law should exist,
Yes.
but you agree with... Like, I'm trying to invoke, like... You know, like the MLK letter to Birmingham jail, where it's like, yes, I agree that I should be...
Do you know what
I should fight this
prosecutorial
law.
discretion is?
No.
Prosecutorial discretion is we acknowledge that there are situations where law is broken, but we understand that there are underlying factors at play, which means that we're just not going to prosecute you. We know you did it. We know you were guilty, but we're not going to prosecute you. This is we call it prosecutorial discretion, and we give it to prosecutors for these types of situations where we recognize that someone obeyed a higher morality. That, yes, they did break the law, but there was a higher morality at play, so we think that it would be unjust to punish these people for doing something that was objectively correct, even though they broke a law to do it.
That's
and I think that plays... That absolutely applies right here, right now.
No, for sure. It for sure does. I'm baffled by this. Maybe I just haven't heard examples of this, but like, if I were MLK is like a personal hero of mine, and I also think that the judge was in the right to send him to jail for the actions that he did. Does that make sense? That like there does need to be some sort of standard of like, hey, you did break the law. I agree with your moral
I'm
standing.
curious what law that MLK broke that you were okay with the judge sending him to jail with.
What was it? Well, hold on. I'm being an
Are we
idiot. What
talking
was
about
Birmingham jail?
trespassing? Or are we talking about him refusing to leave the diner?
No, I don't think a sit-in is against the law. I could be wrong.
It was in the Jim Crow South, right? Like in the Jim Crow South, he broke those laws. They were on the books. You think it was right for the judge to sentence him to jail for that?
I forgot. Hold on. It background was arrested. Hold on. Issue blanket injunction against parading, demonstrating, boycotting, trespassing, and picketing. That's interesting because I don't stand by that for sure. Okay, maybe I just didn't know.
Let's. I'll let you walk it back.
Right. Because that's First Amendment shit. All right.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
I get you.
But like let's say someone did. Let's say like the Black Panthers, for example. Like they have a shootout with the police, and you find them morally justified because they're essentially standing back against like an obvious moral injustice in the Jim Crow South, right? Even though they were obviously committing violence.
I think this is different.
Sure.
If it would be applicable if you were saying that if the cops had kidnapped all their daughters, right? Kidnapped all their daughters, put them in jail. There was no reason, no leg to stand on. This was just corrupt cops doing corrupt shit. Then yes, I think the Black Panthers have every moral right to go in there, guns ablazing, right?
No. I agree with this. But then the question is, should they be indicted? Do you feel like
no?
Do you feel like if you were the judge, you
I am not
occupied that space
prosecuting
in the
that crime.
society, you will. That's so interesting because I
Why
for
would
sure
I?
believe.
If I knew for a fact, okay? Now it's different like if we were holding a trial, right, and we wanted to use this trial to overturn the law. Fair enough, right? Maybe that might be a way to go, right? But if
Mhm.
I'm sitting at the judge and during the trial, the facts of the case come across my desk, and these are the facts of the matter, uncontested, this actually happened and this was the reason, there is no way I am sending any of those people to jail.
That's so interesting because I feel like judges occupy a different status in society. They're no longer
Okay,
moral actors.
prosecutorial discretion applies to prosecutors.
Sure,
So
for
it
the
wouldn't be
prosecutors.
prosecuted, right?
So sure. But let's say you're the judge and the prosecutor brought it to the case. The prosecutor is choosing to indict. You're the judge. Do you still like?
Yeah, we
do you
give
do you offer that?
judges discretion, and I think it's a good
Okay,
thing we do because I think that there
that's
could be overriding factors or underlying factors at play that changes the moral, changes what justice means in these
I
situations.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with it as a moral actor, but I just think that there are some positions in society that we ask them to take more, like we ask them to not take moral stances for the sake of like living in a rural utilitarian sort of like we live in a liberal like structure, superstructure. You know what I'm saying? Like if a judge is like, no, I don't think that the Supreme Court justice should just write down, hey, I think that we should let gay marriage happen. A judge should be able to say, I agree with that decision, but I don't like the way that we did it, so I'm going to go against it. Does that make sense? Like I think that there are some
Normally, yeah, I
positions in
agree.
society. There are some positions in society that we exclude the moral. We don't view them as moral actors anymore. They
Um,
shouldn't be moral actors. That's my.
hmm,
I'm making a statement that they shouldn't be moral actors. That they
okay.
should be abiding by the law. So that and like
Regardless of any underlying factors, that
not
no underlying factors can come into play. A law was broken, punishment must be upheld, regardless of any of the factors around the crime or the case.
as a judge.
Yeah,
As a judge, I think yes. As a judge, I think yes. And
I
I could be swayed. I could be dissuaded because like I can already feel like there's probably some counterexamples that I'm going to fall back on.
you know this is coming. But $5 from Cameraman 502 to say, isn't this simply enabling wrongdoing and giving criminals the whip hand? Also, Wick, you're looking for the common law defense of necessity. Thank you for the $5.
Common love necessity.
Yeah, I don't know that technical term, so I'm not going to address
No,
that
for sure. I'm
technical
gonna.
term.
Yeah, I'm
Please
interested.
look it up. But there are absolutely times and situations where we in a liberal society recognize, and we have these again laws on the books, and we have these exceptions written in, right? That's why we can amend the Constitution, because we
Mhm.
recognize that there are certain times, situations, places, things can come across contexts that can be applied that would mean that the laws that we have on the books are lead to an unjust outcome, lead to an immoral wrong that is done in service of the law. And I think that having these exceptions in place is a good thing. And I
Sure.
would, again, extrapolate this out to say that in the case of a special unit, a special forces team, or a military platoon who, in order to rescue and save lives, disguises himself as a civilian in order to go in and to save a life. Again, assuming all the facts come out in play, that they weren't trying to ambush the enemy or anything, that they weren't trying to lure the enemy into a trap to kill them, but it was strictly to get in and get out without killing anyone, right?
For sure.
Then in that case, I'm going to exercise my discretion as a judge and my discretion as a prosecutor if I happen to be the prosecutor, and either by not bringing this to prosecution, or if it does get brought to prosecution, by extending leniency and refusing to sentence them to anything harsher than maybe a slap on the wrist.
Cool. Could I respond with a quote
Please.
from King? So this is from Letter to Birmingham Joe. I hope you're able to see the distinction I'm trying to point out. In no sense do I advocate evading or defying the law, as with the rabid segregationist. That would lead to anarchy. One who breaks an unjust law must do so openly, lovingly, and with a willingness to accept the penalty. I submit that an individual who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the highest respect for law. Do you disagree with that, or do you feel like it doesn't agree with me?
Neither. I
Okay.
think that the difference here is that I
Mhm.
don't think that the law on the books is unjust. In fact, I would agree with you that it is a just law. However, the context of the situation. So let's look at the reason that this law
Oh,
is
I
in
see what
place,
you're
right?
saying.
The
I see what you're
reason
saying.
this law is in place is a very good reason. It's because there are bad state actors who will pose as civilians in order to lure their targets into an ambush and to just mow them down and kill them, to put the
Right.
people's lives in jeopardy of the enemy. That's one of the reasons why, like, a lot of militaries that we're excluding Hamas from this, right? But a lot of
Sure.
other militaries, they get jumpy around civilians when this happens because they don't know if they're actually civilians or not, or actually looking to ambush them. And so it puts those civilians in real danger. Okay? That's the reason we have this law in place, is to prevent that from happening, to say, hey, this is bad that when you do this because it increases the likelihood of civilians being targeted. But let's
But you
look at
said
Hamas. Let's look at Hamas,
sure.
because we can't remove them from the context of this.
I
They
agree.
already dress as civilians.
I
They
know. And it's
already have
psycho.
done
Yeah.
this. And they
And they
and the law that's being broken here is being broken to save lives. They're not trying to ambush them or anything. So there is no valid reason for Hamas to suddenly be looking at civilians, because the IDF isn't trying to kill them. Well, they are, but not by using this tactic. The IDF is trying to rescue their hostages, and I don't give Hamas any grace here, right?
I don't,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And I'm not trying to
I
suggest you do. I'm not.
no,
I
for
know.
sure. But no. I'm not saying you are, but I do want to assert myself that I 100% agree with this. That when it comes to, like, if we're sending people to the Hague, it's fucking whoever the Hamas leadership is first. Like, I think we both agree with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I guess so. My confusion is, so you said the reason why this doesn't apply is because it's a just law, not an unjust law, right?
The quote, yeah, because we're not opposing the
Right.
law. We're
But
not
you
opposing
wouldn't.
the law. We're saying this law is in place, sure, right? And it's a place for a good reason. We don't want it changed. I'm not advocating for it being changed.
So,
But what I'm
so you're
advocating for is for prosecutorial discretion and judge
Right.
leniency here.
I
That
guess
I'm just not going to, I think that they did a moral good. They did an objectively good act. And I'm not going to punish someone for doing something that's objectively good.
sorry, there's two different conversations that we can have, which is, one, are the outcomes good? And two, if the outcomes are good, should we prosecute them anyway? And I'm kind of interested in the second. So the reason why I am is because you said you would also not prosecute King, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't prosecute. Like, if I was a
You're the
prosecutor,
judge.
or if I'm the judge.
And you're the judge, because I think that the prosecutor can sort of pick and choose the cases. The idea is it's already
It's
on
already on
the
my
docket.
table. And facts of the matter is, and let's look what he did. He sat in a diner that was against the laws of Jim Crow.
Knowingly broke the law.
Knowingly
Yeah.
broke the law. No. But again, this is hard to put myself in the thing, because assuming I'm a Jim Crow judge, that's baking into some
No, you gotta
predispositions I have.
be Wick.
Yeah,
you gotta
then
be
no,
Wick.
absolutely not. I think that's bullshit. This law's bullshit. I'm not going to send him to jail for it.
So it doesn't have to do with the fact that it's just or unjust then, right?
What do
Because
you
you would do the same
mean?
thing for King. Because you do the same thing for King. You obviously, Jim Crow laws were unjust.
Yes.
Okay, and you would do this. What I'm saying is your outcome is the same regardless. You would advocate
No,
for
he was doing a morally good
prosecutorial.
thing. He was
Right.
Well, it wasn't morally good, but it was a morally neutral thing. He was just sitting in a diner.
Well, it was a morally good thing. He was obviously fighting against this unjust law.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, regardless of whether or not the law is just or unjust, because in the case of Hamas, or in the case of the IDF, the law is just. In the case of Jim Crow, it's unjust. You would advocate for prosecutorial discretion regardless, right? So it seems like the nature of the law doesn't really factor into your moral calculus.
No, it okay.
Sorry, maybe I'm not following.
It
I'm trying to
does, but
understand.
I think that these situations are disanalogous. But I would rule the same in each case, but for different reasons. In the
Okay.
first case, when it comes to the hypothetical where the IDF broke the international law in order to disguise themselves as civilians, in order to sneak into an area where they can rescue hostages, I think that I would say that the law in that case is just, but because they were obeying a higher law, that they were doing a moral good, that I would refuse to prosecute. However, in the second case, I don't think the moral good is it's more morally neutral. There is some moral good there. It's obviously a moral good, but it's not he's not saving a life, right? Like it's different. But the law is fundamentally unjust. So even if
Right.
he was like being an ass about it, right? Like I would still say, no, this law is just morally I'm not going to prosecute anyone for breaking this law.
Huh. Okay. I think I fundamentally disagree. Like, I think I do think that you should operate outside of the realms of a moral actor. But we can go back to the
Sure.
sort of utilitarian calculus. We can sort of like say,
Please.
is this good? Because do you concede that it's very possible that, or sorry, it's almost inevitable that humanitarian aid workers will be less likely for aid to be reaching Gazans
To
due
some
to this
extent,
decision?
I acknowledge it is possible and even likely in some cases that this might happen, yes.
And you feel like that's worth it?
Because I think it's happening anyway to a lesser extent, right? Like Gaza's not letting their people get the aid
No, I
as
agree.
we speak, right?
I agree.
So
I
and
agree.
the risks are mitigated by the fact that it can't get too much worse. And I think that a nation has a duty to its citizens
Mm-hmm.
over its duty to other citizens. It still has a duty to other people's citizens. It does, but it is less. I think America should prioritize its citizens over a Russian citizen, for example.
Do you? Okay. Here's a
Do you disagree?
question. I think I do.
Okay.
I don't know if I've ever thought of it like that,
Please.
but I believe I do because, like, do you support like Gitmo? You know, like, do you support
No, I don't support Gitmo.
I'm not trying to like,
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
do you understand like that? Like, do you support uh terror or torturing a
No,
known
obviously not.
terrorist in order to gain information to save the? But I don't understand how that.
I don't
that
think I don't think torture works. If it worked, we could have a different conversation. And
can we live in the
cases,
hypothetical that it does work?
then it depends how many lives. I think obviously it would be horrific to say I'm not going to torture that guy because of my values, and then you let 50 million people die in a nuclear explosion.
But if it's
right?
only
Like,
one, that should be enough for you, right? Because we value this person.
I
higher
don't
than this
think
person.
torture works. Is the thing.
Right? No. I agree with you. But I'm saying in the hypothetical that it does, or we are there's some way
in a
to, like,
hypothetical, it does where I can torture a guy, and I know for a fact that I will save 50 million lives.
you're able to like drill a hole into his head and like get
I'm
that
gonna
information
have
out.
to save the 50 million lives, and it's
No,
gonna suck.
one person. It saves one person to do that.
Oh, it saves one guy to do that?
He's a murderer, and he's
Then
like,
no.
I'm gonna.
I don't think I do.
Doesn't that make sense? That like because you said what I'm trying to call into question is your idea that you actually do think that America should protect American citizens over.
Sure. Let me give you a
any
better
other
example,
citizens.
perhaps.
Okay.
You are in charge of a special forces team. The enemy has 2 hostages. One is American and one is Russian. You can save one. Who do you pick?
I mean, American, but it's a coin.
Yes. Yes. Assuming everything else is equal, this is a hypothetical. You pick the American, and you should, because you have a duty, and you recognize fundamentally you have a duty to your citizenry that supersedes your duty to the other. In an ideal world, you'd rescue both, obviously. But when you're forced to pick and choose, again, assuming everything's equal, the Americans should rescue Americans before they rescue others.
What I'm trying to say is that is the last thing on the line. Like, of all of the things to make a decision for, that is the least decision. That is the last decision that I would come to.
But it's still on the board.
Sure, but it's the exact last one. Does that make sense? So, like, to me, it doesn't even like it factors into zero conversations.
Yeah, it's less than, but I think it does factor. I think
it's almost as much as like, would I save the more handsome one or the least handsome? It's like, oh, I guess like I gotta choose. That seems like a thing that like I'm more
No,
gravitating
that's
towards
less.
that. Like,
That's obviously a lesser.
yeah.
consideration
But I'm
than,
saying it's in the same degree to me of like their nationality. I don't know why that plays a part almost in
because a
any.
government has a duty, a fundamental duty to protect its citizens. Do you agree?
Of course.
When that comes into tension with protecting the citizens of other countries, who do you think gets priority or should get priority?
I would have to hear the hypothetical.
We don't have to do a hypothetical. We can look at any military action that America or even Israel has taken out. They are protecting their citizens by putting the citizens of other countries with which they are acting in danger. We recognize that we have, in certain cases, this ability, this responsibility almost, to keep the war from our shore, right?
I think in all historical examples, it's outweighed by the sheer amount of lives that you're
that
saving
happens a
in
lot.
totality. Yeah.
That happens
So
a
that's like,
lot.
I'm
and
trying to
I'm
run
not
through
here
an
to argue.
example.
I'm not here to argue that the IDF is taking extreme care, and they're not. There are no good guys over there. I just want to get that out of the way. And I think
100%.
that we don't take enough care as Americans, right, in our operations. We don't. We should take more care. But I'm thinking at a principled level, yes, you have a duty to your citizenry because that is your nation. That's your responsibility. Like you have a responsibility to your child that supersedes your responsibility to the neighbor's child.
Okay, but then here's my question.
Do you agree? Yes. Okay, great.
Yes. But here's my question, okay? And here's a real question. Okay, you're a leader of a country, okay? You're the leader of a country, and there's a warring nation with you, and you're like, okay, they are threats to our citizens, okay? There is no peace deal with them. But here's what we can do. We can lead a little faction. We can try to pretend like we're there to do a peace deal, and then we just shoot up the whole place, okay? That saves our citizens, guaranteed. But I think what that does, the reason why that's a war crime, that's the definition of perfidy, is the reason why that is so illegal is because then people cannot trust peace deals.
No, I agree.
We need to be able to trust peace deals in order to maintain some semblance of a fucking world that can exist in peace.
Absolutely.
And
I agree.
like, I feel like is there never a case where you can engage in perfidy in order to save the world? No, there's going to be some hypothetical that we can draw, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think like writ large, that threshold is so high in the fucking sky that there is nothing that we could construct in the real world that would ever cross that threshold. So I'm safe enough to just say that is always wrong. It is always wrong to dress as a humanitarian aid worker because that degrades the trust that we have in the Red Cross, which is necessary. It is like vital to every war that exists on the planet. It's not just Israel and Palestine. It's anywhere around the world who's looking at that and being like, oh shit, they just normalize that kind of behavior and the world just sort of lets them off. Like Justice Wick just sort of like let them get off on that plea deal. Fuck, I don't know if my enemies are going to do that.
What that reinforces is the morality of saving lives over trying to kill lives. Because in your hypothetical that you used, and I agree with some chatters who saying hypotheticals don't get to a lot of meaningful ground in this style of debate, and fair enough. And I see your super chat. Let me read it in a second. But to finish my thought here, like obviously I agree with you. In a hypothetical where your country it was at war with another country, you go in for a peace deal, right? Like a perfidious peace deal, and you decide to use that to take out the enemy. That's wrong. That's morally unjustifiable. However, in that situation, if you go in to rescue your hostages, then I switch, right? I switch.
You would say it's okay
because
to
your
engage...
people are in direct danger. You have a responsibility to save your people, And then I think that you should use these, the ability you have. Again, we're not talking about using nukes on them. We're not talking
Sure.
about anything like that. We're talking about disguising yourself. $10 from Running Joke to say, should America do anything militarily to rescue the 8 American hostages held in Gaza, or should we leave the rescue missions to Israel? I think we should do what we're doing now, which is working with Israel to rescue the hostages. And we are through intelligence means, and we should keep doing that. But
Wick,
let
I'm
me
tired of
ask-
you being based in the
I
middle
know.
of our
Let me
conversation.
ask this: do you
Yeah.
have a problem with undercover cops?
No,
Why not?
because I don't think that because I don't put like a regular civilian on a higher level of trust than other civilians.
Well, do you think
you know
the
what I'm saying?
cartels?
Like,
Do you think that there's a reason that the cartels are very violent towards civilians that they think might be undercover cops? Do you think undercover cops posing as something they're not has led to the cartels being more violent towards citizenry? They absolutely have. I tell you,
I
this is not
agree.
a hypothetical.
No,
This
for sure,
has
for sure.
occurred.
You know
So
what?
why are you not against undercover cops?
I'll give you credit. Okay, that was a good hypothetical. That was a good example. That's not even a hypothetical. It's a good example. I feel like that there just needs to be there needs to be a place that's above everyone else is Red Cross workers in the middle of war. That like they get
So if it
preference
wasn't
literally
Red
over
Cross workers,
civilians.
sure. So if the IDF in this hypothetical we're using, and to be clear, just so everyone knows, I know there's a little more people in here. The IDF did not actually do this. There is no evidence that they did. The evidence, in fact, suggests otherwise. That they were in uniform, they weren't using disguises. There was no perfidy, but the hypothetical still exists, and we're dwelling in the hypothetical. So I just want to
Right.
remind everyone of that. That said, so if in this hypothetical, it wasn't aid workers that they were dressed as, but just regular civilians. Would you be okay with that? It's still perfidy,
I don't.
to be clear.
Is it?
Yes. You're dressing as a non-combatant.
Oh, you're right.
Yep,
You are
it's still
right.
perfidy.
I am so right because you have to dress as a combatant. I actually don't know the answer to that. Why is that not an example of combatants dressed as non-combatants? I don't know the answer to that question. But that is something that's so obviously normalized that I feel like I would need to talk to like some lawyer about. I don't. Do you know why that doesn't constitute as a war crime?
I don't know the legality reasons it's not. I can make guesses, but it would be guesses. I don't know for fact. I don't know for sure. But what I do know is that there are moral considerations above laws written in the books. That isn't saying that I'm here to advocate for changing those laws. I think those laws are in place for a good reason. And the perfidy exclusions towards the law in the laws of armed combat and in the Geneva Conventions are there for very good reason. And I think that we shouldn't mess with it. However, my argument here, my advocacy here, and let me just get this out because this is the whole point of this debate, is that there are certain contexts which can come into play which justify the breaking of international law in order to obey a higher morality. And one of those higher moralities is to rescue your citizens from imminent, constant, continuous danger.
Just to be clear, because about my position,
Please.
is I agree with that, but the latter part. I agree that there are some contexts in which that could be the case. And I'm sure that you agree that there are some cases in which, like, if we take a war crime like exploding bullets, right? Like, that are clearly just there to inflict the maximum amount of pain to a human being, there is no justified case of that ever being used, right? Like,
yeah, I can't just not off the top of my head.
Right.
$2 from cameraman to say it's also perfidy to dress as enemy combatants, and yeah, that's there's more to it, right?
Yeah.
But we're
Perfidy
setting that
is
aside.
it's a large
Yes,
it's a
there's
big subsection
umbrella.
of
It's a big
yeah.
umbrella that covers a lot. But I guess like
Aren't you under the same conflict about undercover cops? Because you would also say that is something that's okay to be normalized, but we would never agree that normalizing dressing up as a non-combatant in the middle of war that should never
I
be
think it's
normal.
okay for non-combat operations, and I think I think international law actually allows for it. Again, not a lawyer. not a legal
Sure.
scholar, but I think that
Sure.
you can gather human intelligence, spy work, for example, right? Spycraft.
As long
going
as
in,
it's
right?
not combat.
As long as
that
it's a
makes sense.
non-combat operation. But rescuing these hostages is clearly a combat operation. Let's get that out of the
Right.
way.
Well, so then now my thing's being resolved, isn't it? Because now it's like, yeah, it's different between combat and non-combat.
Well,
And this
yeah,
clearly was a combat situation.
yeah, but
Okay.
like they're like undercover cops. Yeah, they may engage in combat. Like they may use it for like instances where they knock on the door. Hey,
hmm
DoorDash. They're disguising themselves,
Oh,
right?
for sure. Right. They see cocaine at the table and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, I saw I got it.
Or
I
no,
got
the DoorDash to
meaningful
gain
cause.
entry, right, to the
Sure,
location, right? And they
sure.
got SWAT right behind them.
Yeah. I don't know. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not explicitly combat that you're engaging with, or is it? I don't know. I don't know the distinction, and I think that the thing is, I'm just not a lawyer, but I think that that's
You're not a liar
a
either.
really
I don't
interesting.
think you're a
Yeah,
liar.
facts.
So.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Which is why is that okay, but obviously not engaging in meaningful
Well, some
combat
people
is.
would argue that that undercover police endanger civilians and things, and that shouldn't be done, right? Like that we should stay out of areas
Yeah.
controlled by that is an argument someone would make. I just think that like we understand, right, as people that there are things that there are laws of morality that are
hmm
greater than the laws of man. And I hate to be
I
religious with this, right?
uh
But if we're gonna bring up religion, I think that's one of the things that in the Bible Jesus pushed back against. The
right,
laws of the man, the Pharisees and the Sadducees at
right.
the time were very strict to the letter. Like, nope, this is perfidy. You can't rescue that child because you'd be speeding, right? They would really enforce those laws. And I think that
100%.
Christ was like, no,
There's a higher law.
there's a higher law that you should probably obey. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye, but I say unto you X, Y, and Z, right?
And I agree
Yeah,
with that, but I would say that my example of a higher law is rather than saying, "Oh, well, we can," yeah, there's the higher law of working with our citizens. There's a higher law, or like saving our citizens. There's a higher law above that, which is maintaining the peace of the West, of like the entire world, of the structure that we have together. That is the law that we should aspire to maintain.
Do you think
And as soon as
Israel
we degrade
is
on that,
sure? Do you think, and I don't know the answer to this. This isn't gotcha or anything. I'm just very curious what
yeah,
you would say. Do you think that one individual nation like Israel has the responsibility to uphold this order if it hurts them?
yes.
Interesting.
Yes, I
Okay.
do think that.
Okay. I'm not sure if I disagree. To be clear, I'm just curious.
No, yeah. It's an interesting question, but I do think the answer is yes, and it's a tough one, and I recognize that would be a difficult decision for them to make. But I do think that there are some cases where that's the case, and if it includes letting some of your soldiers die, if it includes letting some hostages die, yes, in order to maintain the peace of the world, I do think that is justifiable. As yeah,
Sure. I think that again we're moving away from the specific law of perfidy here. We're moving towards just the order itself and set of
yep,
laws. I do think one of the problems with international law, there are two.
hmm
One, they can't be so strict that it prevents countries from acting out in their interest at all, because then no one will obey it. And if you have a law that no one obeys, it is no law at all, and therefore that order crumbles ipso facto, right?
right,
The second problem with international law is perversely and ironically, it incentivizes actors such as Hamas to use aid workers, to use dressing as civilians, to use ambulances to protect themselves from enemy fire, because they know that there will be consequences for the state actor, in this case Israel, to engage with them. And it creates this weirdly perverse incentive that Hamas and other non-state actors have to utilize civilian structures, civilian infrastructure and things. And I think that is a tension I'm
Okay,
not saying that we should get away from international law.
Right.
There's obviously very good reasons, but we have to recognize that there's a tension here that needs some redress. No?
Well, I would say no. I would say no. I don't know if I fully understand your first point, but I get your second. And I would say that peace, by definition, makes the people who are more violent, more able to take advantage of situations. It fuels them in some sort of way where if we had war constantly, they would be more kept in check, but they can take advantage of the peace of the situation to gather more like pieces. And I would just say that that's just a natural
Can
consequence.
you
Like we can't get
rephrase that? Because I
sure,
don't
sure, sure.
understand how that relates
What I'm
to my
what
point.
all you're saying is that like, hey, the fact that we have some sort of international law allows Hamas to
What I'm saying, and let me be clear here, is that it
Yep.
ironically can put civilians at even more danger because Hamas then is incentivized to use them in order to strike at their enemy in a way that they would otherwise might not be.
it would incentivize
Because
them
if they
because there's a norm.
if they hide in a Red Cross van in order to get where they're going,
Okay.
and Israel bombs that Red Cross van and kills them, they've still hurt Israel. They've still hurt them. They've still
Right.
won a battle against them because they got them to break international law, and this has downstream effects, right? That makes people trust Israel less. It hurts them on the international stage.
So
That's a
obvious
issue, right?
so the obvious resolution is for Israel not to bomb Red Cross
They
vans.
still win in that case because then they can carry out the mission objective that they initially have.
I understand. And that's just the unfortunate consequences is that, yes, when you break international law, there really is no recourse from the opposing army, which is why we have some things like international councils to say, fuck Hamas. Palestine, you're not able to be a state if you keep these fuckers in control. Like, I agree. But there's like you still need to abide by some sort of international standards. Like
I
that,
agree. No, I don't disagree with that. I'm not, again, I don't want to get it twisted. I know people are going to clip these things out of context, right?
Sure.
But again, I just want to I want to like go back to my original claim and what I stand by and what I'm continuously standing by, right? And I think we're circling the drain on a little on this, but I'll let you have closing statements here. But yeah, do you want to just go to closing statements, or do you think there's more that we can explore?
I think I don't know how much closing statements there are. Sorry, I don't know how much more we
Yeah, I
could
think
argue against, because it seems clear that we have the same moral structure of
Yeah.
like, obviously international law is okay, obviously or good. Obviously, it is sometimes necessary to break the law, but we just disagree on where that threshold is, and I just find it way higher than you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, like necessarily, right?
Sure.
Because you say that the IDF has met the
So
threshold, and I say they haven't. So
then
mine must
in
be
that
higher.
case, let's go to closings, and I
Cool.
will give mine first, so I'll let you have the last word, sir.
Mhm.
And gang, if you're watching this and you like my stream, please do so. I appreciate the donations. Give me more of them so I can continue doing content like this. So if you want to super chat, throw bits, subs my way, all this helps the channel. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching me on Twitch or Kick, hit that follow button. But here is my argument as we go, right? That in this specific instance, the Saturday raid, where the IDF rescued those hostages, the accusations, which again are unfounded so far, but if they were founded, if there was some base to it, and if the IDF had dressed up as civilians in order to carry out their attack, to rescue their mission to rescue the hostages, then I think that they would still have been have a moral justification to do so and be moral actors in that case. Because, and it's important here, the mission objective was to save lives, to rescue hostages, to take people who were in danger, imminent threat of death and dismemberment, as well as torture, slavery, rape, and more. That them authorizing that combat mission, even if it involved perfidy, would be morally justified under these specific, stringent contexts and conditions. In other regions, in other contexts, in other missions, they very well may not be. and I would condemn them, and I have before. Specifically when they did a similar thing and dressed up as nurses, doctors, patients to target a Hamas leader in a hospital. That was wrong. That was immoral. That was not justified. The people who carried out that operation and planned that operation should probably go to jail. That said, we have to measure context here. There are morals that outweigh laws. And in this case, to save a life, to save a hostage, is the higher law. And that is my argument. Thank you. Go ahead.
Wick thinks that war crimes are okay. Israel can do no wrong. He supports the IDF because he loves those Benjamins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No. Look, I agree with the idea of the moral foundation. I just think that a couple hostages is not enough when it comes to talking about something as sacred as the peace of the new world. A couple hostages ain't it. That's not enough for me. And I just think that there are some things that we should aspire to even higher than what Wick would like to aspire to. Yeah, I am pulling that. I am the Jesus Christ and you are the Pharisee. After all, Wick. Yeah, I think that's it. I see a couple people in the backstage. I don't know if they want to talk to me and argue with
We
me, but I'm
can.
okay with
Are
staying a
you
little
okay
bit
with
longer.
staying a little longer and
I could do
getting
that.
some callers in? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm fine
Gang,
with that.
if you've been listening to us and you think, my God, one of these people is retarded, and you want to tell us to our face, or both of us are retarded, it could be as very well. Call on
Absolutely.
in and check us out. I'll put the links in the chats and stuff, and you can click on that link. You can set the rules, and you can come on in. Let's bring in the first guest here. Hey, you're live.
Hey, what's happening, Wick? Snacks, I'm not following here. You know, we have a statement from the UN that alleges a war crime may have occurred, appealing to proportionality and distinction, and that's all we have. And yet, the crazies have turned this into not just an implication of a violation, but that war crimes indeed did happen, and then expect to have a conversation in the context that a war crime actually occurred. And yet, what I'm seeing is a complete, I'm not sure if it's just ignorance, willful or otherwise, or if it's confusion at play here. But look, the Geneva Conventions and other rules that are being appealed to here related to proportionality, but specifically related to distinction, is related to lawful combatant status and therefore eligibility for protections under the Geneva Convention. Okay, distinction does not exist as a concept, right? To ensure that that military personnel are distinguishing themselves from civilians in order to, oh, I don't know, whatever kind of weird view you have in terms of why distinction exists. Distinction exists so that we can protect soldiers once they are captured on the battlefield, retain their dignity, etc. Okay, so what war crime do you think occurred here?
People's elbow. Welcome to the conversation. I never said that a war crime occurred. We were dealing with a hypothetical. I'm sure Wick can attest to this, but we were living in the hypothetical that this war crime did happen while acknowledging that it was unfounded and that we were just saying, if this is the case, would that be justifiable? And Wick said that it was, and I said it wouldn't be. We acknowledge that the IDF probably did not do that, and that we are not indicting the IDF for doing this.
Well, fuck you, you backpedaler.
Oh shit! Okay,
Sorry
called
you
out
missed the
for that.
conversation.
No, I didn't think I missed it because there
Okay.
were repeated appeals to war crimes, and
Yeah.
and the conversation proceeded along the lines that a war crime had been committed.
I hear your confusion. What I think happened in the middle in the conversation is at the beginning we're like, let's live in the hypothetical that this did happen, and then we lived in the hypothetical. So I apologize for the confusion. I actually really appreciate you coming on so that we could re-clarify this did not happen. We were living in the hypothetical that it did happen, and then weighing the moral arguments about whether or not
to be
that would
clear,
be
we
okay.
have no evidence that it did, and there's evidence that it didn't. I just want to make
Yes.
sure that distinction because we
Yeah,
could have
no,
more
you've made that
information that
clear.
comes out.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
You know, the second part of this is, you know, weighing the morality of this. You know, Wick, I think you had a very bad appeal to some higher law or order that would justify such a war crime being committed. Again, the point of distinction is that we permit countries to wage a war, and that when lawful enemy combatants, are following the rules of law, that they are then protected under these conventions that we have all agreed to abide by. Yet we have a party here who, one, is deliberately choosing not to abide with those conventions. They fight from behind civilians and disguise the civilians in every instance that they engage Israel in. And Israel here, even if they had a driver dressed up as a civilian or aid worker, or otherwise, there's a difference between dressing as a civilian to wage war, right, and dressing as a civilian to rescue hostages. Okay, and so I don't think you have to appeal to some higher law order. There's nothing wrong with the convention, and as far as we know, Israel didn't do anything that would warrant such an appeal in the first place. They abided by, they adhered to their obligations under the conventions and other treaties or rules such as we have them.
So just a clarifying question for you. Or this isn't even a hypothetical, would
Yeah.
you encourage Israel to commit war crimes, considering that Hamas was clearly the first one to disobey and show a blatant disrespect of international law? That Israel is maybe even morally justified to start ignoring that as well, if it's a means to their end.
Well, no, in the context though of what a war crime is, which is a grave violation of these existing treaties or international law that they've signed on to, no, there's not a pretext here to say, well, Israel can do it too. That's
Right.
not the case at all. I think here, though, Israel did engage with Hamas dressed as combatants. They were wearing military uniforms, carrying arms openly.
We're ceding to that, but in the hypothetical we were debating, if they had not done it and they had just dressed as like a civilian or an aid worker,
Yeah, then I think they would be violating these conventions.
okay,
And
yes,
that would
I
be bad.
agree,
And that would be
but
bad.
would it still be moral for them to do so?
Well, okay, so away from the bounds of legality,
Yes.
Right.
I have a
Okay.
system of morals that
Cool.
would indicate it would
Then
be.
we
And lastly,
agree.
can we?
Well,
can
I
yeah,
agree with
well,
you.
no,
He doesn't, but
yeah,
I
no,
agree
I
with
just
you.
think
Yeah.
yeah. Lastly, I think once again, we see another instance where Hamas has engaged journalists and doctors and the UN to be complicit in their activities. And all the caterwauling and hand-wringing by the left and progressives and the anti-Semites out there about journalists being killed in Gaza, right? About doctors being harmed in Gaza. Again, somewhere, some person out there is going to have to stand up for sanity here and say, look, this is not just partial Hamas responsibility. This is 100% Hamas's responsibility. We can wash Israel's hands clean
I don't think we
of
can.
responsibility
I'm gonna disagree with
for
that.
these deaths.
I'm going to disagree with that. I think that simply because they use journalists and journalists participate doesn't give Israel carte blanche to target all journalists or all civilians. It
Oh, no,
just
no, and
doesn't.
they're not exercising such carte
I
blanche
think
anyway.
sometimes the frustration from my perspective is, I know you're not familiar with my content, that's totally fine, but like I've made a considerable amount of TikTok videos about the Israel and Palestine, and I would say 95% of them are critical of Hamas. But then I come in here and I say, hey, that doesn't excuse Israel from engaging in war crimes. And it's like, wow, why can't we criticize Hamas? And it's like, okay, well, I think like
I hear you. No, I hear
like
you.
I don't know. I like if you ever feel like I'm defending Hamas, I apologize and I will 100% course correct.
Oh no, and I'm not saying that you do. I'm just speaking more generally now that
Sure, and I
once
agree
again
that
we
there's
see this.
I agree that there's problems on the left. I agree that there's problems with progressivism, with anti-Semitism seeping into those sort of spaces. Yeah, that's all a problem that I've even been on Wix panels before talking about. Like, I agree that those are fair concerns. I just don't know how much I'm fueling that flame. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't think you are. So
Okay,
Wick,
cool.
send my ass to the void. Thanks
See you
again.
later,
Have
buddy.
a great one.
To the void he goes.
Bye bye.
Okay, Crop Duster, what you got for us?
Oh man, it's not Crop Duster. You actually know
Aircraft Sparky, what's
me,
going
Wick.
on?
How you doing, buddy? How you doing?
I'm here, man. What do you
Yeah, it's
think? What do you got for
yeah.
us?
So look. There are reports and there's actual some after action report stuff that you can actually find. There was one person that was dressed in civilian attire, a female driver in the first vehicle. But there was no war crime that happened, and the reason why is because special operations forces are allowed to do these things. Plain and simple. It's not a conventional force, and the reason why it's legal for special operations forces to perform these actions is because they work in small elements. And I get what you're saying. I really do, Staxiums. The precedence that it causes. But why aren't you griping about the use of the protection of refugee camps? Why aren't you griping about armed Hamas militants hiding amongst these
Oh, I'm
refugee camps?
sorry.
And
I'm sorry. I
Wick,
apologize.
please
Staxiums
defend me just a little bit.
has spoken out against those on my stream, right? He
oh,
has
okay,
spoken out against that stuff. Like,
but
do
I
not
just, like-
mistake Staxiums for a President Sunday, right? He does not defend Hamas. He does
I-
not run cover for these people.
It
right?
is a little crazy, like, and I said this, I don't know if you were listening to the last conversation, but it really does feel like 95% of the times that I'm talking about Israel and Palestine, I'm criticizing, I'm like, these are psycho terrorists who have essentially like cooed the current government, suspended elections, and then have committed willy-nilly like war
They
crimes.
didn't coup the government. They
Hamas did.
became the government. No, they did not. They were elected in, and then they stopped.
They
stopped
no,
No,
hold
no,
on.
they were-
They
the
did. They
Palestinian-
threw around. They were elected as a.
They were elected in and they cooed the
Not a-
they were like a separate.
Yeah,
Hold
they
on.
were a part of the government, but they were not the
And they
whole
could
government.
be the whole
What
thing.
they did is they killed everyone who was not them who was in the government.
Like it was like the enabling act, like Germany like did the enabling
Let me put
act.
this. Let
They
me put
did-
this. Hold on. Let me put this in words that I know Aircraft Sparky would understand. Okay, it's like if all the Democrats decided to rise up and kill all the Republicans. That would
Yeah,
be a
but the
coup.
Democrats were elected. Were elected. Wick.
Yeah, but that would be a coup.
They were elected.
Right? We understand how that would be a coup. Correct?
Well, I mean, sure, yeah.
Yes. So that's
Okay.
what Hamas did. Hamas was elected as part of a faction within this government. But what they
Yes,
did
yes, they were a
was
faction within the
a faction within the government is that any faction that was part of the government that wasn't them, they threw off a building.
And then suspended elections.
Yeah.
Further.
Well, I mean, the PA is really not much different either. I mean, they're just a little bit more moderate, and they tend to cooperate slightly a bit more with Israel's government,
sure.
but they're really no better. The problem
Okay.
with the execution of this war is the fact that you're dealing with an enemy with no scruples, and Israel has done everything in their power to uphold morality. No time in history can you find an enemy combatant force actually allowing food and aid to go towards their enemy that they're in actual kinetic combat with. This doesn't happen. The American army
Is that
will put
that-
an entire area under siege and starve people out. And the IDF is allowing aid to go through.
I don't know if that's true. Like
Oh,
I'm not
it's
like that's not I would for sure have to double check my sources, but I do feel like you like what's it called
And
when you
legal to do that, by
fully
the way.
barricade the city and then you like allow no food in? There's like a name for it.
It's called
I
putting it
for-
under siege.
I'm thinking of a different word. I
It's
thought that
siege
that
warfare
just
is what
essentially
that
doesn't
is.
happen anymore. Like
No, it
that-
really
I
doesn't
don't know
happen
enough,
anymore.
About siege
It doesn't
warfare.
happen too much anymore, but it did happen in Mosul. The U.S. Army and the U.S. Marine Corps. Yes, we've used siege warfare multiple times during Iraq. It's common. You control everything that comes in and out of that area. You could do
Okay.
that with air, the land, sea, and everything else. In fact, what was it?
just to be
Fallujah. In Fallujah, we
Uh-huh.
actually refused to allow, but only a small amount of food in.
But I think the time bears a consideration here, right? Like if you
Yeah.
do that for like a week while you're prepping for operations, you go in, maybe. Again, I don't want to come too down.
No,
I'd
no,
have to
no,
think
no.
about
So
this
they
more as a
would.
concept, right? But I could see under in very limited conditions, right? Perhaps.
Well,
But we're not
it's
when we're
usually
talking
under
about
limited
like.
conditions, but
But when we're talking about
Israel
like
has.
Gaza,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
different.
It would be so much. It would be so easy to place that under siege, and you know it, Wick. They've already
Yes, but
got the
if the
blockade,
siege is
which
for
is
years,
But
huge.
it's
there's
a
so
problem, right?
I would
Well,
guess that the percentage of civilians in Gaza is way higher than these places that are being put under siege. And I don't
no.
like this is a I'm spitballing here because I don't have this information like you do. But I will say, let's just say that this is true. Okay.
Mhm.
America is more in the wrong during the Battle of Mosul and Fallujah than Israel is then. I agree with
No,
that.
not at all. They aren't
Isn't that your
wrong at
whole
all.
argument?
So no, what I'm saying is people who don't understand the law of armed conflict, they don't understand how war works. It's
Okay.
it's it's one thing to think something. It's another thing to vocalize uneducated on it. Okay, it's not
Okay.
a it's not good. Okay, the idea that you cannot dress up as an aid worker as a conventional force, you are absolutely right. That is illegal.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but to do it as a special operations element, it is 100% legal.
I do
It's
not
happened
know.
all the
Sure,
time.
I don't
It
know
happens
enough
a
about
lot.
the law.
Well, no, there's a
Hold
difference
on.
between it's legal and it happens all the time. I don't
Yeah,
but go
but
ahead.
I just want to.
So
I just
for
want to just
special
as a disclaimer, kings and
yeah.
queens. Okay, I don't know if Artcraft Sparky is right or not. I can't say either way. You
So
will have to figure that out at another point. But I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's like
there's
that.
exceptions
What's
to
the
every rule is really the point. And the idea that people go and immediately go, this is a war crime. Well, here's your real war crime. An area that is designated for refugees is being occupied by a terrorist organization, armed militants that is in active kinetic war against a state entity. They are holding
uh
hostages in that area, and they are using who would appear to be civilians as human shields. All these things are actual war crimes. Now, recently reports have come out that have stated that the workers who were leaving Gaza prior to October 7th, working in these kibbutz and stuff, are also guilty of giving information to Hamas, distances between buildings, number of occupants, type of people occupying, any weapons that are in these areas. They gave all this intelligence to Hamas. They are no longer non-combatants. They are combatants because they are active participants in that attack. So the idea that now doctors and aid workers are going to be unlawfully targeted, Hamas did that to them. It is not Israel that did that to them.
Okay.
Okay.
Last word. Then we're gonna cycle. We got one more.
Yeah. Great content. Keep it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about me? Anything?
You're a TikToker. I don't care.
Bye.
Valid. I just wanted one compliment. Was that so hard?
Apparently. We have one more caller we'll get to. You're live. What you got? You're muted on your end, sir, or madam. I don't know.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. What you got?
All right. You touched. First of all, I want to acknowledge that your interlocutor is not supporting Hamas, and that he has been very critical of that.
Basically.
And I'm hearing more of a policy disagreement than a moral and legal disagreement.
I agree with that, which is why we kind of said we were circling the drain. Do you have a policy or do you have a moral disagreement?
My moral disagreement, it's actually more of a, I guess I would say more of a policy one. But we were
Okay.
talking earlier about when international law is violated by Hamas, and then it's basically Israel doesn't have any recourse because Israel has to rely on international courts that, frankly, don't seem to be interested in holding anyone but them or the losers of a long gone civil war to account.
To be clear, the ICJ is bringing up charges against certain leaders of Hamas, based on sexual predation that occurred on October 7th and among the hostages. This is happening. It's going through. Whether or not it goes through, I don't know. But to credit where it's due, the ICJ is looking to prosecute some of those things. Yeah.
And if you want to be frustrated that it took a while. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, fine, I will. I will track that for the fairness, to give them the chance to do good, make good on it. Um, so, for example, your last guest mentioned, this is a refugee camp, but is it a refugee camp? It's been a perversion of the law. It's an established settlement that's been there for decades with freestanding buildings. It's the remains of what was in the 40s and 50s a refugee camp, but it gets to retain that status because Palestinians get to retain refugee status indefinitely.
What's
Hello?
the challenge or the point that you want to
So my
discuss
challenge
with us?
is I see a lot of it. Basically, you put Israel in an impossible situation where they can't respond to violations of international law, because if they do anything, it goes off vibes. There's no international law about. There's an international law that says that if you are using a refugee camp, using an aid worker
Okay.
station to do combatant work, that makes you a legitimate target within reason, but those reasons are vibes.
So there's two things that I want to
So,
address here. One, I'm going to agree with you, and one, I'm going to disagree with you. The agreement first.
okay.
So I do agree that there has been a weaponization of international law against Israel that has been very effective, and it's very wrong. It's immoral. Israel can't do anything without people claiming falsely that it is a war crime, falsely without any evidence that Israel has done something morally reprehensible, and that is a war crime. They will invent things whole cloth. They will maliciously and falsely and wrongly interpret international law in order to indict them. They will leave out context. All these things happen. That said, there are times where Israel has absolutely absolutely individual elements of the IDF, and maybe even as policy, has violated international law, and they should be held to account when that happens and when they do that. So I think that the two things can be true at once here. That yes, a lot of people are crying wolf, but that there is a wolf, at least in some of these occasions. Can we agree on that?
I would agree with 100%. We got
Beautiful.
the example of the World Kitchen incident.
Mm.
That seems to be pretty okay, there's miscommunication and there's not enough checks. And it seems to be a policy issue where if you can justify it, they can pull the trigger. And that's what I see a lot more of when I see Israel violating the international law than anything else.
And you're right, but it's still a violation, and it still needs to be
It's
addressed.
absolutely a
Yeah.
violation.
Yeah.
But the point I lose my sympathy, I guess, which is a terrible thing to say, that international law, when it's everything else just seems to be a vibe check.
I agree with you that Israel does seem to be put in a really in between a rock and a hard place. Like it's almost like any decision that they make is sort of indefensible. But I would recognize that that's a very hard decision to make, and still encourage them not to recourse with war crimes just because the enemy is. And I would say you should put your resources in advocating for indictments of the war crimes committed by Hamas. That's what I would encourage them to do. And I would say, it's easy being a bystander as well. Like, I recognize that, I'm not the one who has civilians at risk. I'm not the one who is a civilian at risk. But I don't know. I do have family in Israel, and so I do. It's not all. It's not all coming just
You
completely
have
out of
some
left field.
skin in the game that most people,
I have a little bit. Yeah.
Most people spouting off don't. Okay.
True.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling in, sir. Anything else?
Thank you for having me. Nope.
Okay. Have a great day.
Okay. Wick, I was just thinking about one more thing real
Please.
quick. I don't know if you want to end it real quick,
Well,
but I
let's
was
see
just
if what you say is interesting, and then I'll make a
sure.
decision.
I was thinking about prosecutorial
Discretion.
what was it called? Discretion. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you. And I do appreciate the word of the day. I'm gonna write that one down. Do you feel like it's very possible if we sort of start encouraging that on an international law level, that there is some judge that gets out there, some prosecutor who's like, look, did Hamas commit war crimes? Of course, but they're an insurgency group in the middle of a colonial state that is, de facto a segregational system. Like, we can't prosecute them because they're the defenders of
That
some.
is possible, absolutely. But do I think that
It's wrong because it's wrong, not because like prosecutorial.
No, that's not the argument
Okay.
I'm making here.
Okay, go
The
ahead.
argument I'm making here is that to get rid of prosecutorial discretion will have
Mhm.
worse outcomes than the possibility that it will be misused. And to be clear, it has been misused. We can point to
Sure.
instances both federally, locally, statewide, where people aren't prosecuted that absolutely should be, right? And how judges or prosecutors have not brought things to law for perverse incentives, corruption, etc. This happens. It's true. But I think that as a policy, from a moral standpoint, I think it is good to recognize that we do not have all the answers and that our law system is not perfect. And
Right.
prosecutorial discretion is sort of like a tool that we have in order to fix injustices that were unintentional in the law based on the context of the situation. So that's what I would argue in that case.
I hear you. Well, Wick, you never fail to have me thinking. So I
Good.
appreciate the conversation.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
cameraman's back if we want to bring him in.
And I just put him back there. I didn't.
Oh, I see. My fault.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Where can
I'd
people
love
find
to-
you?
Oh, thank you. I'm mostly on TikTok. I mostly make stuff on there. Staxiums, basically anywhere. I'm coming out with a YouTube video pretty soon. It's like a 3-hour video essay on linguistics. So if anyone's interested in that kind of shit, I don't know if this is just not my audience for it, but yeah, YouTube. It's the same handle everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. Those are the 3 main things that I use. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, man. I'll see you later, buddy.
All right. See ya.
To the void. Did you guys did you enjoy tonight's debate? I hope you did. How do you think I did? Do you think it was a Wick W or a Wick L? Come on. Let's do a poll in chat, okay? We'll do a poll in YouTube chat here, right? I don't do enough YouTube stuff, okay? Let's do the interact with audience. How do we do this? I know there's a button here I can press. Let me figure it out. Engage with my audience. Start a poll, okay? Wick W question mark? Yes or no? Or let's make it clearer. Who won? Wick or Staxiums? And I'll put the poll in Twitch as well, I guess. Our poll. And please vote, because I'm very curious your thoughts. I'm very curious. I think so here's my impression here, and then we're gonna end soon. Don't worry. No, I won't keep you guys hostages too long. I'm not Hamas, okay? But my impression overall is I think my argument remains strong. I remain unconvinced that it was immoral or unjustified to break an international law to save those hostages. Again, acknowledging that they didn't actually break the law, but assuming they did and assuming they broke this specific law. In this specific context, with this specific law, I think it's fine, right? To not fine, right? But it's justified morally. I do still acknowledge it would be breaking the law, but I think it's a moral justification for doing that. I value life, and I value the saving of life. A lot of people have been very angry that so many died during this rescue operation. Over 200 Palestinians were killed. Whether they were combatants or civilians, we don't know yet, but we don't know the ratio, at least. But let's assume at least some of them were civilians. The IDF, at least in this instance, isn't responsible for a single civilian death in that case. The mission was not to go in and to target Hamas. The mission was to rescue the hostages. And Hamas started the firefight. Hamas put those hostages in the middle of a civilian market. Hamas was the one that tried to stop them, right, from escaping. Hamas was the one that started throwing grenades, firing mortars, anti-aircraft rockets, etc. While civilians were in the area, they engaged and initiated this firefight. This is on Hamas, 100%. 100%. Anyway, thank you. one and all. Tomorrow at 6:30, we're going live a little later than we normally do. We're going to be hosting a debate between Alex Kirsch and Rob Knorr on Biden versus Trump. So some politics for you guys. Tune in at 6:30. Should be good. I was asked to moderate this debate, so I decided to do that. Thursday, I'm going to go on another channel. We're going to go on to Timothy Imholt's channel, who's a big D&D guy, okay? And we're going to be talking about gatekeeping. It should be fun. It should be interesting. So tune in then. I'll get you more details. Follow me on Twitter, gang, if you want the details for that. Friday, we will be having a debate on Ukraine. Recently, the U.S. has authorized in limited cases U.S. munitions to be used in strikes on Russian soil. Is that good? Is that escalatory? We're going to have some people on to debate it. It should be a good night. $5 from Lesson Cell to say, to clarify, I agree with you, but Staxiums was slightly ahead until you whipped out the undercover cop analogy. That one turned everything around. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. So we have mixed results in the polls. On the Twitch side, Staxiums won. But on the YouTube side, Wick won. So mixed results. We can both take away a W here. So thank you for that. Who are we raiding into, gang? Who is live right now that we can go to? Let me see. Where is it? You know what? They make this harder to do every single time. In the studio, edit, customization, redirect. Who is live right now? We can go to... I don't see anyone that's actually live. Man, I'm sorry, YouTube people. I'm sorry. Something generic says, wait, please increase the volume on your YouTube VOD uploads. I can never hear them when I listen at work. I will look into that. I don't know what the deal is with that. The live section should have all my live videos, right? I don't have an editor right now, and so I don't have any edited uploads. So we just have to go with the live stuff. Is that too low for people? I will look to see if we can't get that fixed. I don't know what's going on here, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's, I don't know. Yeah, we'll just kind of end it tonight. No raids. I love you all.